Greetings. Peace. I'll wait for some people to come in. This is kind of a last minute thing. Didn't really plan this, so figured I'd come on for a quick minute. Not sure if I'll be able to come on this Tuesday, so I figured I'd do something today. Peace, Sister Trina. We're just gonna wait for a couple of people to come in. Again, this was something kind of last minute. Not sure if I'm going to be able to come on Tuesday, so that's why I kind of figured, let me see if I could slide on right now for a little bit. This way I can get some material in. So, no, it's kind of a last minute thing. Usually I'll try to, post it a couple days in advance, but schedule's a little hectic this week. So again, I'll remind people at the end of the video, I'm not sure if I'll be able to come on this Tuesday. I'm trying to keep Tuesday as a regular night. But due to some stuff, work and business and things of that nature, just some things coming up. All right. While we are waiting for more people to file in, just, as usual, I'll just go through a couple quick announcements. I'm sure most people that are on either the email list, the text list. If you're on the Google Hangouts list, I did forward the flyer for this month's events. I did send that out yesterday. So if you did not get it by chance, and I'm pretty confident that everybody that's on the list anyway received it, whether I sent it out via text, I sent it out via email, and I even send it out on my Google Hangouts list. So if by chance you did not receive the flyer for this month's event, just go ahead and hit me up and I'll get it over to you. But real quick, just want to briefly, while we're waiting for more people to file in, I just kind of briefly want to talk about this month's events and kind of what we're doing. I tried to keep it brief on the flyer. I'll give you a little detail. Kind of what's going to take place for this special 2-day event that we're going to be doing, just so we're clear. If you do have any questions, if I can address them here on the event, it would save time of you having to email and me having to get back to you, etc. Now, if you did get the flyer, it's a 2-day event, the 26th and the 27th of this month, which is a Friday and Saturday. So I just want to kind of explain to people how it's going to work. Sunday, not really nothing on the itinerary for Sunday. Depending on what time some people are flying out, we could get together in the morning and kind of just, chill, whoever's left. I left Sunday open because for people that's traveling from out of state, this way that gives them an opportunity. If they got to leave early Sunday, they can get back at a reasonable time in order to attend to their business, their job, their profession, their career, or just for the fact that they need to be back. So I set it up with that in mind so people have that opportunity to get back on Sunday. All right, so on Friday, what's going to take place on Friday, as you saw on the flyer, on the 26th, all right? On the fly, didn't list them. There will be an itinerary when you arrive as far as the presentations and different workshops that we will be doing all day Friday. Ones that we have lined up, we'll have a couple of different presenters. I know Sister Sonia is going to do something on herbs, and she's got a second presentation on practicing magic as a female on the left-hand path. I'll be doing a couple on Luciferianism, demonic integration, just some of the topics that we will have some presentations on. So that'll take place all day Friday. We will break in the middle of the day for lunch for an hour. When that concludes at 5:00, we do have a set itinerary. So we want to stay on the time schedule so we can get a lot of things in, which we have a lot of things planned for 2 days. So after Friday's workshops and presentations are finished, people will get a chance, whether you're local or whether you're, staying, at a hotel and you're traveling, you'll get a chance to go back to your hotel for a couple hours. Then at 8:00, we will regather, and the working that we will be doing, as you saw on the flyer, initiation into the Luciferian energy and activating the energy of Lucifer. All I can tell you is this: it's a male-female participation ritual where females have their parts, males have their parts. And we will be working in this particular ritual as a group with each chakra. That's all I'm going to put out there for that. That's going to be the main working on Friday night. The ritual is going to be, it's going to be really nice. Trust me. I've already started putting pieces of it together. It's going to incorporate a few different things, but it's centered around activating the deity within yourself, or the Luciferian or Lucifer energy. So that'll happen. We'll regather at 8. And once that is finished, that'll be followed like we usually do on a monthly ritual. We'll be going out to grub after that. On Saturday, because since that is going to be a late day and a late night, at 12:30, I'm going to be doing a class on the journey of a Black Adept. That'll start at 12:30. We'll run that for a couple hours, followed with a open discussion, question and answer. We will film that where people can pretty much ask. It's going to be a very vast topic, so you can ask. That would be the time to really ask the questions you need to ask, or give input on things you need to give input, etc. Once that class is over, we will again head back and meet up. I'm going to say roughly around 7 o'clock. We will be meeting at the beach, which is, all of this is in the same area for those that are traveling. It's all within minutes of where you'll be staying. I know where some of you are staying. We will be setting up a altar on the beach. We'll start this at about 7. We will be doing a drumming ceremony for the Igun, the Orishi, and the Loha. There'll be some things for that ritual. It's the best thing I could tell you. Well, we have a little secluded spot. We'll kind of take ourselves. The beach that we use is not too overly crowded. We'll kind of go a little bit to the side. So that'll take place on Saturday evening. Right after the drumming ceremony, we will get some grub, and then we're finishing the night with a ritual at the cemetery. And that will pretty much conclude the 2 events. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. All right. So again, that will finish the pretty much 2 days of events. It's important we stay on the schedule itinerary. We'll have an itinerary so you can see when you arrive. The $25 registration fee is for both days that you see on the flyer. That's the cost for both days, which I think is fairly reasonable and cheap. You can pay that when you arrive. If you want to pay that before via PayPal, you can let me know, but I actually prefer to just pay it when you arrive, just in case you don't show up. Then don't have to worry about keeping track of refunds and things of that nature. So I want to just be clear. I think that pretty much covers the basics of what the event, what it's going to entail. It is by invite, so you do need to, if you haven't contacted us and you're interested in coming, you do need to email me. So we could have a brief conversation. There is some basic things you need to bring for the ritual for yourself, so we can go over that. So again, it is by invite. We will cut the invite off like we do every other event a couple days before the event. We do that because we have to have a physical head count so we know what to prepare for, okay? And that's pretty much it. I think the flyer is self-explanatory, brief to the point. So if you did get the flyer and you had some questions about kind of what we're going to do, etc., that's kind of what's on the itinerary and the agenda for 2 days. So it's a lot for 2 days, but we want to get it done. I think it'll be a good experience. If you've never experienced group ritual and some of the topics we're going to cover, I guarantee when people leave, you're going to go back. We're gaining some growth in those areas. I'm sure it will assist you in your own personal spiritual path. You definitely will be able to apply some of the work that we're going to do the 2 days. And as you know, that's what I do. I'm about doing work. I'm not about just sitting around talking. There is a time for that. But when, it's time to get together and put in some work, that's what we do. We put in some work. If by chance you do drum, I will have some extra drums. Now, if you are coming in, I know traveling, you want to travel as light as you can. If there's anybody coming that is a drummer and has a drum and is able to travel with it, I encourage you to bring that drum for Saturday night. Feel free to the open part of the ritual where we will be drumming after we open the ritual. All right. Other than that, also you can email me. The email I'm going to give you is in the description box of all the videos, as I always tell you. You can also contact me at that same email for a spiritual consultation, a reading. You can contact me at the same email address. Also online classes, which will be starting in the middle of November. I know a couple of you have already started to pay. Again, I just want to remind you, as the email says, you have up until right before the class starts in November. You can break those up into how many payments you need to pay. I'm pretty flexible. I try to work with people. The online class sessions, as I say, they're on Saturday, and they do last about 4 to 4.5 hours. So I just want to make sure you're clear on that. We do cover a lot of material. The itinerary / curriculum is in the email. Those were the topics we will be discussing going over on a week-to-week basis. So for any of those things, classes, spiritual consultations, readings, feel free to contact me at khnum19@gmail.com. All right. So I think that covers that. Again, I'm coming on today. I usually don't come on Sunday. Not sure. Just want to make people aware. If you came in late, and peace and greetings to everybody. If I didn't greet you personally, peace. May not be able to come on Tuesday night. I'm not sure. I will, again, just for those that follow the channel, I am trying to keep Tuesday evening as a regular night. But due to a lot of things in dealing with business this week, I've been extremely busy. So I don't know right now if I'll be able to come on Tuesday night. So this is why I decided to just go ahead and pop on right now, just in case I am not able to do that. All right. So what I want to kind of talk about, we always talk about on this path. We went over, obviously, the last 3 weeks, we were talking about Luciferianism, right? What it represented. You always hear the concept of being a critical thinker, okay? We're going to talk about multiversality. We're going to talk about, not versatility, multiversality, like universe. We're going to talk about the subjective and the objective universes and how that ties into critical thinking. Especially key when understanding how black magic works, understanding how powerful the mind really is. And really, in a nutshell, 90% of this, I'm basically going to tell you, is probably mental. Right? All right, so it's key, regardless of what you study. Now, as we know on this path, now you can utilize so many different spiritual systems. I don't care what it is, but you, the practitioner, or you being that facilitator of how you're going to utilize that energy and apply it and put it into practice, you still got to be a critical thinker. You still got to be able to tap into the power of your subjective universe to make it a reality on your objective realm. All right. This is important to understand because that's how magic works. That's how, enforcing your influence or your will upon a situation so you can get the outcome that you're desiring. Now, we talked about last week out of the Book of Belial, the Book of Earth, just to bring some things up. Desire and intent are the keys that fuel your magic. How bad do you desire it? And how strong are you feeling your intent? Well, that all starts mental, which takes us also into something you always hear me talking about, the Hermetic principles of Tahuti, right? And I know I mentioned the last couple of weeks, if people did go on to the Luciferian site, okay? If people did go on there and look at the reading list, that is one of the books on there. the seven hermetic principles of Tahuti, or sometimes known as the Kabbalion. To me, it's the foundation to understanding your subjective universe. I think a lot of people, quote unquote, in conscious circles, especially Kemetic conscious circles, who get so caught up just in Ma'at, Ma'at this, Ma'at that. And Ma'at is very important, but it's useless without understanding and mastering the seven hermetic principles of Tahuti. As I said before, the seven hermetic principles of Tahuti deal with the subjective realm, and Ma'at deals with the objective. And knowing how to mesh those two things together to make it work for you is the key. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, being a critical thinker, how I can't stress enough. If you're not a problem solver, think of it like this. I'm just going to use a metaphor. I'm not saying it's the exact same way, but think of this. Think of you solving and I know I really wasn't a huge algebra person, quote unquote, but think of those math problems that you hated to solve. Problem solving. That's what a lot of this path is about. It's about being able to come up with solutions, whether you want to call it obstacles, challenges, problems. It's all the same thing. This is, again, why we get on this path, because it's a system that we can utilize and master for us to evolve into those gods and goddesses that we talk about in so many different spiritual systems, other than just reading about it. We're not interested in just reading about it. We want to actually apply the work. So I'm going to take a excerpt from a book I mentioned last week, the second edition of Mindstar, from Dr. Michael Aquino. Again, you can find it on digital, be it on Kindle, Amazon. You can find it also in hardcover or paperback, whichever's your fancy. I tend to have them on both. Books that I keep, as far as in my library that I know I'm going to utilize, I get copies of both. So I actually have copies of both of these. All right. Actually, I don't think I need my glasses with this. All right. So I'm going to go and I'm reading from the digital format. I know some of you just have the book. I'm reading from the digital format. I have a couple small sections I kind of want to go over. Now, it's very important, because if you want to know how I don't care. Again, it doesn't matter what you're practicing. I want to be clear on what we're getting ready to go over. You could be utilizing, a system of demonic integration, Luciferianism. You could be using vampirism. You could be using any of the African spiritual systems, be it voodoo, be it hoodoo voodoo, be it any of those, even working with Palo and the Orishas. They're all forms, quote unquote, of what we call black magic. Why do we call it black magic? All right, because this question tends to come up a lot, and I've gotten this question a bunch of times. Isn't magic just magic? And I want to make this clear. The answer to that question is yes and no. There are different levels of intensity of magic, okay? There are different frequencies and vibrations of magic. So when we say yes and no, that's what we mean. Because for an example, if anybody has been a practitioner of all different areas of magic, and in my experience, I like to classify them as light magic or white magic, earth magic, gray side magic, which I like to call, which is in between, and then there's black magic. And I'm going to explain. If you practice pagan, Wiccan or pagan type of magic, it's a certain vibration, a feel. It's more earthy. It's dealing with more nature. It's got a lighter energy to it. And if you practice it, you understand what I'm talking about. Then what I consider like gray side of magic would be like the Golden Dawn type of spiritual systems, which to me, they're kind of in the middle. They're not really light and fluffy, but they're not really dealing with intense, higher aspects of, quote unquote, what we refer to as black magic. Then you have actually black magic, which deals with more of your powerful systems like vampirism, like Luciferianism, like even in the African spiritual systems like Kinduki, African witchcraft, sorcery, Palo. Any of those systems deal with the more highly intense level of black magic. Now, anybody that knows or is familiar with them, whether you studied them or practice them on a regular basis, there's a different vibration, frequency, and energy. There's a different feel to each of those systems. There's a different way to apply them. So there's different levels of magic. So again, I want to be clear. When somebody when that question comes to mind, isn't magic just magic? And that's why I always answer that question. The answer to that question is yes and no, because you have to understand there are varying degrees of magic. All right. So let's talk about multiversity. Multiversity. All right. The phenomenon of individual consciousness is not identifiable in a vacuum. For humans to recognize this facility, they must first become aware of an environment outside themselves, then realize, if initially only passively, that they are severely something distinct from it. All right. Now, this is kind of dealing with understanding the isolated consciousness, right? So pay close attention. First and foremost, when you approach this path, or you make the intent to come on this path, you must make the intent to separate yourselves from everything that you've conformed to in your current lifetime. What do I mean by that? To tap into and really, or sometimes we like to call it the gift of Set, right? Or the gift of the Prince of Darkness. To be able to tap into that, you must be able to separate yourself from personal belief systems that you might still or may not be carrying, or might still be leaving an impact on your subconscious mind. You must also put aside all personal philosophical aspects of how you look at things. Basically, you take on a nonconformist mentality where you separate yourself from everything, quote unquote, that's mainstream, or that you've come to identify that you've just been going along with and haven't really been able to fully 100% grasp why you do it. Because unfortunately, a lot of people in a lot of spiritual systems, they stay loyal to them, or they stay in them because, one, there's just certain things they like. They've never really intensely scrutinized and investigated that spiritual system. And some just stay in it because they're comfortable and they've been in it for a while. All right. So I'm going to go over this material. And again, then I'll go through the chat. I'll address your comments and your questions. So just be patient. All right. All right. So first step, understanding you're distinct from all of this external stuff. That's step one. Get in your mind knowing that you are distinct and different and unique, right? This would seem to be a simple and obvious juxtaposition, and so it is on a subconscious level. Humans go through their lives differentiating themselves from their surroundings and other humans in any number of habitual stimulus response contexts. Nevertheless, while these same humans are casually comfortable apprehending the external environment, they are far less certain about and comfortable with perceiving and describing themselves as conscious individuals. Indeed, it is this confusion which is at the core of humanity's greatest discord among the species throughout its recorded history as it's surveyed herein. Now, I want to stop there because you hear that term, and this kind of explains it. When somebody says they're conscious or woke, which I can't stand neither one of those terms, to be honest with you, what do they really mean by that? So you need to ask, what is that person's definition, quote unquote, or being conscious and woke? Because sometimes we confuse that with being aware of these external things, as it said here. We confuse that with real consciousness. So the question is, when somebody says they're conscious or awoke, just because you read, per se, something in a book, or you read some historical fact, or you made some statement, that doesn't necessarily mean you're conscious or you're woke, okay? So when we hear that terminology, we all have to understand or ask ourselves, what does it mean to be conscious, right? Because there are different levels of consciousness too, and we're going to talk about that. And that's why we're going to be talking about, again, the subjective and the objective and the multiverses, right? All right, so let's go on. Put simply, until you are clear as to what you are and what you are not, and what these differentiations are, you cannot make an intelligent decision concerning your behavior as its rationale. So there's your answer to part of the question, step one. Before you identify what consciousness is, the question would be, do you know who and what you are? Now, I want to make this clear, not by something, not by a specific dogma or doctrine that defines you. Because, let me give you an example. If you say you are a practitioner of the Orishi spiritual system, is that really what you are by nature and blood? Is that only a small part of what you are? Now, I'm going to tell you it's a small part of what we are, because we are all those things and all those things are us. What tends to happen is, when I mentioned a minute ago how we tend to grasp and cling on to external things and identify it and then use that as a basis to say we're conscious, quote unquote, woke, that's when we become exclusive to a spiritual system, right? All of us at one point or another, be it Ifa/Santeria, be it Palo, be it Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, whatever it was, whatever dogma, philosophy, or religion we became exclusive to, we also, in that process of becoming exclusive, we cut off our creativity. That's number one. We didn't realize it at the time, but we disconnected ourselves from everything else in the multiverses, because when you lay exclusiveness to something, you also create this illusion that this is the only true and right way. This is the deception and the illusion mentioned about these external things that we get trapped in, right? So this is the confusion. A lot of people will make these statements. Well, I'm initiated in Ifa, or, I study Kemetic spirituality. That just means, again, you're aware of something, right? But that's not what the question is being asked. The question is, you can't understand what real consciousness do you understand who and what you are. Let me give you an example too. A lot of people now, in the last 15, 20 or so years, Egypt has become such, right? Studying and connecting and laying claim to Kemetic consciousness is such a huge thing right now. It's become kind of trendy and fatty, right? I've said this before. If you trace your genetic bloodline, unfortunately, you might like to lay claim to Egypt. I don't care if you are the darkest of dark melanated to the lightest of light, fair skin. Not everybody is a direct blood descendant of Egypt, so stop fooling yourself. Unfortunately, people like to convince themselves of these illusions because they identify with Egypt and they like what Egypt represents, and it resonates certain things within them, which that is fine. They create this false veil and illusion that, well, I'm Egyptian. Not everybody is a direct descendant of ancient Egypt. Don't fool yourself, okay? Because if everybody traced their bloodline, I know many people, you understand? I know many people that study all these different doctrines, and I know some of them, when they trace their DNA, they're from the west coast of Africa. Some of them are from Guyana, some of them from Benin. They have nothing. Now, I understand you can get into the whole historicity of it, in essence, it's all Africa, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that. But I'm saying along those bloodlines, when we became tribal and merged and meshed and then expanded out, we took on different cultures. This is why that whole illusion of peace and love doesn't work. And what do I mean by that? Because we're tribal by nature. This is why you can get certain folks in a room together and they just don't get along. You may not on the surface have an explanation for it, but there is a reason, because there's certain tribal blood that runs through our veins. Let me give you an example. How many times have you just walked into a room or a place and you just looked at somebody and said, I don't really like that person. You don't really know why, because you don't know nothing about them. That's because that person might have tribal blood that's adverse to yours. So I'm saying all this to say what it said here. In order to really understand what consciousness is, step one is knowing who you really are. Now, let me stress this. Not who you think you are, because a lot of us live our entire lives portraying and putting all this energy into how we want people to see us and who we think we are, right? I don't care if you're putting on dashikis. I don't care if you're wearing ilekes, big ass ankhs, whatever it is. That doesn't define who and what you are. Sometimes that creates an illusion. You understand? So sometimes we'll do that and we think, because we're doing that on the outside, that's what we are. That's not what you are. Because in essence, here's the real deal. When you strip all the external stuff away, okay? When you strip all the tangibles away, okay? When you remove all the external things and it's just you, your mind starts to run. Thoughts start to process correctly. This is why, as I said before, we've done spiritual work together as a group, and sometimes in the darkness, some people can't meditate and work in the darkness or do ritual work in the darkness because their real self starts to rise to the surface. I'm not saying everybody, but we've done stuff and you hear people fidgeting, moving around. They can't sit still. That's a disturbance within themselves because they've never really tapped into who and what they really are. And this is why I explained many times before, once in a while, just sit in a complete dark room with silence. I'm not talking no light, nothing artificial, nothing tangible, just complete darkness, right? Complete utter darkness and silence. In that darkness and silence, the real you will emerge. The real thoughts of who and what you are will start to come to the surface. All of the bullshit that you've identified with, I don't give a fuck if with all your, your assalamu alaikum, your shaloms, your hoteps, your alafia, all that bullshit goes out the window. And then you're going to start communicating, quote unquote, with your, I'll use a term you can connect to, your inner being, your true self. We call it our intuition, our inner self, our higher self. The ancient Greeks called it daemon, right? Where they get the word demon. This is why we say when we do demonic integration, we're talking about tapping in and working with our higher, true, or real self. And this will be incorporated in the ritual at the end of the month. Whole nother story. But this is what we mean when we say demonic work. Now, that word, obviously, as I've mentioned before in the past, got grafted into the word demon during the time when, it got grafted into monotheistic religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. We're not talking about religious definition of demons, right? We're talking about daemons, your higher self. And some call it your guardian angels, spirit guides, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It's irrelevant. The point being is that's who and what you really are. When you tap into that aspect of yourself, you start to get, the awareness, and you start to get, if you want to use the term, a revelation, or it's revealed to you your true self. That's what this path is about. That's what this work is about. Now, it don't mean you cannot connect with certain levels of those spiritual systems. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're supposed to work with those spiritual systems and not let those spiritual systems work you. The problem is most people are controlled by them spiritual systems. They become slaves to those spiritual systems when you become, quote unquote, exclusive and say, I'm exclusively Kemetic. I'm exclusively Ifa. I'm exclusively this, or I'm exclusively that. You're not going to understand what real consciousness is because you're not going to be able to grasp who and what you really are. So it's not who you think you are. It's not who you portray yourself as. It's who you really are, right? That's the reality, all right? All right, so let's see. We left off. While this might sound daunting at first glance, the stuff of turgid theological puffery or fluffiness or excruciating graduate philosophy courses, it is actually quite obvious and straightforward. All you have to do is to confront it openly and honestly, which is exactly what MindStar seeks to facilitate. So step one is knowing yourself. If you can be real with yourself, right? We talk about this all the time, your strengths, your weaknesses, right? This is step one on this path. Not, again, as we've mentioned this a bunch of times before, it's very easy for us to big ourselves up and give ourselves pats on the back about what we do that's good, right? We all like to dwell on I'm good at this, I'm skilled at this, and that's a great thing. I'm not saying you're supposed to dwell on your strengths. Part of understanding who and what you really are is also understanding your weaknesses, right? That's something we don't do on a frequent basis. And again, it could be something as very basic and simple as having a very bad temper, maybe not being a good communicator, maybe not being, fair. And when I say fair and kind in certain situations, there's a certain level of that I'm talking about. Maybe you are a shitty husband or a shitty wife. Maybe you're not as good as a mother or father that you thought you were. Maybe there's certain fears, right? And I want to talk a little bit about that because I'm going to be doing something on that soon. Fears are one of the keys that keep out us evolving into becoming gods and goddesses. We fear things on the surface that we're conscious of. Let me give you an example. I'm going to talk about two things, okay? We fear things that we know about. Some of us might have fear of deep water. Some of us might have fear of insects and snakes. Some of us might have fear of heights, right? Some of us might have fear of any of these physical things, right? That has a certain effect on your psyche and trauma on your subconscious mind. Then there's things that are logged in the subconscious that we're unconscious of, not aware of on the surface. Let me give you an example. And these fears can stunt your growth. I talked about this briefly in the past. We'll bring it up again. Some people are victims of abuse, be it physically or sexually, and they bury that trauma in their subconscious mind. And though this might have happened at a very young age, let's say, we'll use that example, and though now they might be in adulthood, they think by burying it that that's going to make it go away. And so your next question might be, well, what's the solution to deal with it? The solution is one-on-one. But you approach it practically. Let's be real. It never goes away. Okay. So I'm not saying poof, it's going to completely go away. But the best way to deal with it is by putting it in its perspective, addressing it and dealing with it and understanding how you feel the way you feel or why you feel the way you feel. Or one, maybe you're feeling the wrong way, but you just don't understand it. What I mean by that is some people in that situation have laid the blames on themselves, even if it was done at an early age and you were abused as a child. You tend to take the blame for yourself. I've known this in dealing with certain clients over the years that they thought they did something wrong. Well, I can tell you this, if you're a child or adolescent, there's no fucking possible way you could have did anything wrong if an adult took advantage of you. The adult should have used their basic reasoning to know that that was off limits. I'm just giving you an example. All right. So those are the fears. Now, it could also be shift away from that. It could also be something as basic as maybe you were bullied in school, right? Maybe you constantly were bullied and picked on in school. And this took place, let's say, through your elementary school years. And even though you might have, retained some normalcy through middle school, high school, college, you maybe never addressed psychologically how that fucked you up. Maybe when certain situations arise, maybe you have fear of getting in an altercation because you were picked on or jumped or beat up all the time. I'm just using an example. So those are just a couple of examples of some fears that maybe we're not addressing that we tend to bury, that we're not conscious of. This path is about bringing all of those things to the surface, good and what we might, determine, quote unquote, as being bad to ourselves because it's personal. All of those things must be addressed so you can understand who and what you really are. So when you understand who and what you really are, not again because you've been studying Kemetic doctrine and you put on Egyptian attire and you say, I am a direct descendant of the ancient Egyptians, that's a fucking illusion. I want to make that clear. Because bottom line is, here's the other thing that I don't understand with people here in America, all right? Bottom line, I'm going to talk about something real quick, which I thought was fucking funny. Some of you might have seen it. Some of you might not, but I got to throw it out there. I thought it was kind of fucking entertaining. And I'm not taking a side on anything before I talk about this, but I'm going to throw it out there. Some of you's probably seen it. The problem is with a lot of so-called, quote unquote, melanated people in America, Latinos, Blacks, Asians, every other ethnicity that ties into it. Mostly American melanated people. I don't know why they tend to want to go back to Africa and leave, and everything is Babylon this, America is this, destructive there, back to Africa, blah, 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 blah. All right, that's an illusion too, because what that tends to do is, first and foremost, we're not addressing ourselves. I don't give a shit how much cultural stuff you study, how much natural shit you're into. The bottom line is all to an extent, we're all Americanized in some shape, form, or fashion. Keep it real with yourself. Okay. This is where most of us were raised. I'm talking if this applies to you. Most of us, even if we came here at a young age, even if you came here at 10, 11, 12, 13 from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, technically you're still Americanized to a certain extent. I always do this just to strike a thought in somebody. Like I always hear, oh, this is Babylon. This is it. So I said, just fucking leave. Well, why are you still here? Because one, it doesn't make sense for me, somebody standing in this country saying how fucked up it is. Then just go somewhere else. I'm not saying that I agree with everything with America and everything with America is perfect. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this is part of understanding who and what you are. Why would somebody be in a situation or a scenario and then complain about it and then stay in it? That's my whole point. As far as if America is Babylon, this and that, and America is this and that, why are you still here? Then just go to where you think. If you think Africa is peaches and roses, you're fucking confused. If you think there's no, some of America is 50 times worse than here and more Christianized and more religiousized than it is here. And you can't even speak free like we're speaking right now without getting your hands or your head or your legs chopped off. All right, because you don't understand what's going on in places like Liberia, where there's civil war, civil unrest, places like Sudan, right, which are separated again, north and south, constantly in conflict with the Arabs that went in there and invaded and tore the whole fucking country up with Islam. All right, this is the thing. So when somebody's on that go back to Africa kick, I tell them, look, I'll buy you a ticket, just go. Because what you don't understand is if you think Africa is like America, that you're just going to go there, find a place to live, and think you're going to find a job and it's easy just like that, or open a bit. If you're not contributing nothing to the economy, first of all, they didn't want you there. And trust me, there's a different way and method of dealing with government and law there. You think there's no democracy here? Shit, it's a whole nother story there. But anyway, leads me to my point. Some of you might have seen, which I thought was fucking hilarious. Some of you might have seen, and again, I'm not knocking the brother. I'm gonna throw it out there because I got a ton of emails about it this week. I went and watched it a few days ago, and I thought it was funny. That brother, Minister Enki. Some of you've probably heard of him. He's been on Sonet's channel on Sonet TV. And, there was some video that leaked of him in McDonald's, eating at McDonald's. He came on like a day or two after that video leaked. He came on Sonet TV and said that there's a series that he's filming called Aha, whatever it's called. And it was like a joke video. Now, he claims somebody stole footage and manipulated it. Now, when you watch the video, it's funny. He's definitely him in the video. He's definitely at the counter. He's definitely sitting down, killing some fries and eating a sandwich. Now, his response was, I'm telling you why I'm bringing this up, because it connects to what we're talking about. His response was the footage wasn't manipulated. He produced some footage showing that there was some side footage he had where the guy that he was working with filming it, where he claims he brought his own bag in, that he handed the bag. The footage to me looks like it was additional, like may have been done after the fact. That's just my opinion. But it's hard to tell with all the chopping and manipulating. So that's why I'm not taking anybody's side here. But I want you to catch one important thing here. So he claims that this was, first and foremost, something he's filming series. You can find it on his channel, which you can't. You only found the video of him refuting this whole video of him being in McDonald's and eating. So he claims he was eating a veggie burger. And, and in the follow-up footage that he provided, what he did was he showed like what he had in the bag. And that's the footage that looks like it was added to. He's claiming now somebody stole his footage, manipulated it, and put it out. He's not saying who it is because he don't want to mention the names, which I find that a little fishy myself. Anyway, but he goes on to say, in a nutshell, I won't stay on this too long. In a nutshell, he goes on to say, all right, he will admit he was eating the fries, right? But don't judge him for it. He was eating the fries. All right, here's my problem. Let me tell you again. When you put it now, if you know who this brother is, Minister Enki, he lays claim to being a master vegan, a nutritionalist, a master detoxer, all this stuff he identifies with. The problem that tends to happen, again, back to getting caught up in the illusions of who you think you are. And again, it's not to knock anybody. I want to be clear. Whether it's Umar Johnson, whether it's Dr. York, whether it's Minister Enki, when you put yourself up on this holier thou pedestal and you put yourself in this venue that you are holier thou and infallible and you are some religious spiritual leader, you got to take the heat and the scrutiny that comes with it. See, on this path, we lay claim to being. Now, if I want to go in motherfucking McDonald's, not that I really go in there. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been in there here and there. But if I want to go in there, I'm going to grab something, whatever the fuck. I ain't going to get caught up in all that rhetoric and religious and you shouldn't be eating that, this and that. First of all, if you take in a basic diet, you don't eat it all the time, right? But if you're going to get into all that religious shit, because even veganism, in itself has become a fucking religion. I hate to say it, but that has been a reality. I'm not knocking anybody that's a vegan. I want to make that clear. But my whole point is you got to take the heat that comes with the territory. Same thing like Umar Johnson when he got caught with that stripper last year, or the year before, whenever the hell that was. Okay, I gotta check that. Yeah, be careful. People are sending me that Facebook, those accounts that got hacked. Be careful. If you're getting multiple requests, I'm getting emails from people I know, family in New York. Be careful. They've hacked it bad. And if you're getting a friend request from somebody you already got on your thing, don't just ignore it. But anyway, I'll address that afterwards. So yeah, just like when Umar Johnson got caught with the stripper, right? What was the problem with that? And again, I don't want to dwell on this too much. The problem was he claimed to be abstinent, right? But when he got caught, he admitted he was boning, right? Now, if you were just real with yourself, you're a fucking man. And if you was just craving some pussy, you was just craving some pussy. Stop trying. But it went from that. I would have respected the brother more if he'd have just been like, yo, I slipped. I fell off. I was fiending for some ass that night and I acted on my impulse. You understand? And that's it. But to go on this tangent and call the chick he called her some crazy shit, a conscious whore, right? But she wasn't a conscious whore when you stuck your dick in her, right? That's a whole nother story. Nobody put a gun. Then he claims that the white man and the powers that be was setting him up. Negro, nobody put a gun to your head in your hotel and forced you to get into your car and drive over to her hotel and bone her. You understand what I'm saying? This is the bullshit that I'm talking about. That illusion. See, when you get caught up in that illusion that you're some spiritual guru, you understand? That's when you get trapped. See, now if it was me, I'd have been like, you know what? I was fiending for some ass. All right, so what? You got some footage of me. You caught me. I'm not denying it. I'm a motherfucking man. That's human nature. Because you make and prolong your misery worse when you just, now what is part of this path? Owning up and accepting your strengths and your faults. So I would have respected the brother more if he would have just said, look, I slept. I was fiending for some ass that night. I was in the hotel. I was just chilling. You know, my mind started wandering. I was talking to this chick, whatnot, and shit just happened. See, I respect that because that's just basic human nature, reality. But see, when you put yourself on that pedestal and you can't own up to it, because if you identify with it, it destroys the false persona that you created about yourself. That false persona that I am some spiritual guru, leader, and savior to all people. Fuck that shit. That's the bullshit that I'm talking about. Same thing with this Minister Enki brother, right? You ate the fries. Dude, but you're an example. First of all, what are you doing in that place anyway? If you claim to be master vegan, this and that, regardless of what you claim you was doing, you understand? And you knew if you got caught up in that place, even by accident, there comes a responsibility with when you put yourself on a pedestal. It's like an entertainer or an actor or an athlete. Athletes claim they don't want to be role models, but they are, whether they like it or not. Like when they get caught doing something foul, to say, don't condemn me. I get it. You're right. You shouldn't be held accountable as long as you own up to your faults. But when they don't take credit for their faults and say, don't judge me. I didn't claim to be a role model for kids. Well, guess what? You are, whether you want to be or not. That's just a fucking reality. So all of this comes when you want to deal with the illusionary aspect of who you think you are. And that's the only reason why I brought up those scenarios. Now, us on this path, here's how it works, okay? There is a part of indulging, but indulging with discipline, right? So if you feel like stopping into McDonald's, I don't want to get into all the rhetoric of what the food is and what the food is not, all right? Because bottom line is, if you want to get into the whole vegan thing, just because you go in the Whole Foods or Fresh Market, if you ain't growing the shit from the ground and plucking it yourself, it's not 100% organic. So I don't give a fuck where you think. I don't care if you're eating in some organic shop that's claiming to be organic. As we know, you saw several months ago, Whole Foods got busted where a lot of their quote unquote organic chickens and vegetables were being shipped in from China. So just because some Negroes eat at Whole Foods and buy their shit from Whole Foods don't mean that they're 100% vegan and organic. Stop the bullshit, because there's still additives, preservatives, and chemicals injected in those things to give them a shelf life, because they still need to or inject them with some artificial preservatives. So when they put them in transit, they need to maintain their shelf life. Again, if you're not plucking it and growing it and plucking it from the ground, you're not 100% organic, because you're going to find some of the food that you quote unquote are saying you should stay away from. Some of it is probably more healthier than the shit that you think that you're eating that quote unquote is organic. So I don't want to get into I don't want to get into what the food is or not. But I'm saying if we're on this path and we want to stop into McDonald's and get whatever, we ain't got to worry about being judged for it, because I ain't never laid claim to being a master vegan / herbologist. Because if you see me coming out of McDonald's, I'm just craving some fries. And I'm eating the fries because I was craving them, right? Now, here's why I said earlier about we're all Americanized to a certain extent. Here are the same Negroes that are telling you about going back to Africa, but these motherfuckers can't even stay out of McDonald's. Do you understand? Do you see the delusional bullshit in that? That's the shit that I'm trying to say. How in the fucking world are you think you're going to adapt? Just don't fool yourself. Just because, again, you're identifying, laying claim, and connecting with some part of Africa, don't automatically confuse that with thinking you're going to be able to make the adaptability and the change. Because if you are, shit is fucked up now. What are you waiting for? I've been in this quote unquote conscious arena for over 20 plus years. I'm still seeing the same Negroes that I was talking to over 20 plus years ago, talking about they're going back to Africa. They're going back to Africa. These motherfuckers are still here on the streets of New York, streets of Miami, doing the same old bullshit they were doing 15, 20 years ago. Just on corners talking, doing the same old shit, setting up tables and hustling. And I'm not knocking that. But as I said before in the past, don't confuse a hustle with a legitimate business. It's two different things. You got to hustle, not a legitimate business. Now, if that hustle is doing it for you, I'm not judging it. So I want to make that clear because I did that for many years. I used to be out on them streets hustling, setting up tables. So when I'm saying that statement, don't think I'm saying it and coming off kind of negative in the sense that I'm being unfair to people that got to hustle. I'm not knocking the hustle. I'm saying when you're doing the same shit, if I see you 10, 15 years ago and I come see you today and you're doing the same shit, something's not clicking. You understand? So I'm saying all these little things, right, is the illusionary part of us, you understand, thinking that we're something we're not. So step one, I think it's clear. Understand who and what you are before you can make the claim that you're conscious. So next time somebody says they're conscious or woke, ask them, well, what is consciousness to you? Guarantee you they're going to give you 90% of the people you run into are going to give you some generic answer they read in a book from some spiritual system. And then you got to stop them and say, no. I'm not asking you based on something that was divined in a book on some spiritual system you read. I'm asking you based on your experiences, what is consciousness, quote unquote, being woke to you? That changes the dynamics of the question. All right. All right. I got two small sections and then I will finish. All right. Let me fire this up, then cut off on me. All right. Bear with me here. All right. So let's get into the objective universe. All right. The objective universe hereafter is what most humans are accustomed to regarding as the only universe, the physical we're talking about. I want to make that clear. The totality of matter and energy in existence of which these same humans would just assume themselves to be components, right? Humans are aware of the objective universe because they bump into it all the time, from stubbing one's toe to examining galaxies through telescopes. This surrounding is so constant and pervasive that they are physically and physiologically addicted to it. Removing such constant sensory reinforcement normally produces disorientation, followed by panic and insanity, right? For the vast majority of humanity, ironically, it is thus the impress of the OU or objective universe upon which provides and reinforces their individuality. Humans have gradually realized that the OU is not chaotic and haphazard. It exists and functions according to inflexible regularities, normally known as natural or, as they discovered, scientific laws, right? Okay. It's in prehistoric and primitive cultures, before such laws were known to exist and be thus inflexible. The OU was assumed to be variable at the manipulative whims of the gods and gods, and considerable effort was devoted to worshiping or appeasing such entities to prevent natural disasters or cataclysms. So this false sense of illusion of physically, accessing this concept externally through deities that we externalized and worship, thinking that this was going to bring us salvation is what this is talking about now, right? Of course, there were or are enough random interreactions of natural laws to lend credence to divine interventions, explanations, particularly when preached to ignorant masses. Conventional questions concerning the OU include, how did it come into being, right? Now, these series of questions I'm about to run through, this is probably some of the reasons that motivated you at different points in your life to seek out other systems of spirituality, because these are some of the reasons why we came on this path. Here are some of the questions. How did it come into being? Why is it organized as it is? Who created natural law? Why is natural law so completely and permanently enforced? Does the OU have a purpose, the objective universe, or is it just a gigantic accident? And of course, what is or should be humanity's relationship to the objective universe? All right. So before we go and expound on that a little bit more, ask yourself, right? And this always comes to mind every time, unfortunately, I see a tsunami on the news, like just recently in Indonesia. What keeps the water? from coming on shore. Do you ever think of that when you're at a beach? I understand we can get the scientific properties, and I'm not attributing it to some spook or spiritual God because there's a scientific explanation of it. But when something is disrupted in that pattern, because as it said here, is this an accident or is there a scientific formula that keeps these things grounded? Because as soon as that formula is disrupted, we see what nature can unleash, right? Now, there is that microcosm, macrocosm connection, because if we're constantly on this planet and you see why the planet is going through so many great changes, we do affect the natural grid of this planet, whether we're conscious of it or not, by our very thoughts, by the very things that we do and the energy we carry. If you are a negative motherfucker 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you have to take some part of responsibility to the shit that's happening on this planet. If you're constantly thinking, negative things in the sense, when I say negative things in the sense that are not productive to yourself, you're putting that energy out there. And I don't say that in a spooky sense. I'm not saying that and how some people look at karma from a religious perspective. Karma is just the result of cause and effect. Well, the cause of you putting that shit out there, what do you think the effect is going to be? So let me give you an example. If we know that there's a scientific formula to the atmosphere, and we know since the time men have started creating factories and utilizing these chemicals and putting them out into the atmosphere, it's nothing spooky. Common sense tells you something's going to happen. So we're really seeing a product of our actions, everything that we're seeing now. The funny thing is now you get all these crazy motherfuckers that go to the extreme and they want to protest and save the environment, don't kill animals, stop wearing fur coats. It's a fucking joke. It's beyond that right now. That's a joke. You understand? Reality is an adept takes upon the position and says, one, I have to control my immediate environment and surroundings first before I can even think of fucking with that. You understand? Because bottom line is the first law in the universe is self-preservation. If you don't take care of yourself and get your shit right, ain't nobody else can do it. Because in your process of playing, save the world and don't wear fur coats, you can get lost in that process. All right. So to elaborate more on those questions, obviously, humanity has been accustomed to addressing, if not answering, many of these questions by religious myth. So some people, and I'm not saying us who are on this path and study this or put this doctrine into practice on a daily basis. So a lot of people take the easy way out and say there's a spook god in the sky that controls all this. Poof, he snapped his fingers, he made everything. And as long as you obey and do as you're told and follow the rules till you die, you're going to be rewarded with this place called heaven. And you're going to go to this place up in the sky and you're going to be floating around on the clouds with these fat white kids in diapers and everything's just going to be peace and love. That's the illusion, right? But if you don't follow the rules, oh shit, watch out. If you don't follow the rules, okay? Yeah, I'm getting mad people from Facebook. All right. I gotta, yeah, people hacking these accounts, man. If you don't follow the rules, okay, then there's some extreme punishment. You're going to go to this place called hell and be tortured and attacked and persecuted and beat up and whatever, right? Fear, right? Back to the emotion of fear. Religion is fueled by the emotion of fear to control the masses. That's why it does not work for somebody who is on this path and deals with the isolated consciousness of Set. You have to separate yourself from all that. Okay, all of it is an illusion. It's all bullshit. It's all man-made. It's all a myth. Okay, because if I subscribe to that ideology, I'm now in the box. I have become part of that project or experiment. Excuse me, I'm not controlling it anymore. And that's one of the biggest fucking myths, unfortunately, in this day and time that we're still arguing over in certain circles. So we don't care about any of that stuff. If you believe, and the key word is believe that stuff, if you believe all that illusionary stuff that some great being is controlling everything and you're at its mercy, then you're going to fall to the wayside. You're going to struggle in life. You're not going to understand what this path is about. And this is part of coming on this path and separating yourself from anything that's connected to that in some shape, form, or fashion. And I'm not just talking about straight religion. There's some people that are in these other spiritual circles and they're still religious, okay? All right. Anyway. Hold on, man. I got mad people hit me up with this shit. Somebody must have hacked the damn account. I don't know if anybody else is having that problem, but be careful with that Facebook shit. You get mad hits. Anyway. All right. Let me get through the rest of this and then. 1 second, people. Give me 1 minute. Be right back. 1 second. All right, people. Sorry about that. Again, I'm getting a lot of hits. I was checking with that Facebook shit being hacked. So I will respond to these. If you're getting multiple friend requests, I'm getting hit up like crazy right now. If you get multiple friend requests, don't take it because that's part of that whole hacking shit that they got going on. Anyway, so as I was saying, with all those religious concepts, fear, I went through all that when dealing with the objective to kind of bring it full circle to show you this is all part of the illusionary self. This is all objective, and we're going to finish it now with an aspect of the subjective. Now, mind you, I'm just going through this quick. There's more dynamics to this. I'm just trying to give you the meat of it. All right. All right. So many people answer these questions by religious myth. It is easier for the ordinary mind to visualize a god impulsively snapping the OU into existence at a chosen point in time, for example, than to grapple with the fact that it always existed, right? What that basically means is the very fact that a religious person can say, well, God created the, universe. And notice they say universe, plural, uni meaning one in Greek, one universe. Whereas it's just as simple to counteract that and say it always existed. Why is it hard to grasp that concept for a religious person and not the other? Because of the religious myth, right? Then it goes on to say no creative act was therefore needed. As for natural law, human science has no idea why it is what it is or what enforces it. Science contents itself with discovering and codifying such law as it is, period. Concerning humanity's relationship to the objective universe, this is examined in some historical detail in the book's discussion of telos, which is another chapter, which we're not going to go into right now. All right. So that was dealing with the objective, right? That was some of the illusionary aspects of the objective that we get stuck or caught up in. Now I'm saying is when you're working black magic, all of that you have to transcend, and I'm using that term loosely. You have to be able to separate yourself from all that. Especially when you're working greater black magic, you have to be able to transcend all that and tap into that inner depth of your subconscious, right? Or your subjective universe, which we're going to talk about in a second, right? And then finish it with subjective and objective inner reaction. Because then the challenge for the magician or the adept is to connect the two and make them work in unison and harmony with each other. Because the reality is we are objective, to a certain aspect of nature, but what fuels that objectivity or our connection to the objective universe is everything that we form on the subjective. That's why I say, again, go back to the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti. All is mental, mental is all. First principle. Understanding the doctrine of polarity, understanding, the doctrine of gender, understanding vibration and frequency. All of those things are critical when really understanding how the subjective mind works. Because everything you create on the subjective, and you've been doing it since day one, since you've been a little kid, even nightmares that you've had of the most oddest, gruesomest things that you could come up with to the most maybe oddest, strangest things you couldn't explain. That was you tapping into a higher aspect of yourself. That is a reality on your subjective. Though it may not be a reality to somebody else on their subjective, it is to you. When you tap into that aspect of yourself, then you are now at the threshold of the door, really tapping in and linking yourself in, right? All right, the subjective universe. I'll refer to it as the SU, right? Is each self-conscious being's perception of the objective universe. You caught that? So now the things you formulate on your subjective have an influence of what you've experienced in the objective. Watch this. All right. And I would start, hopefully, again, I'm going to go back to the chat shortly. So I would encourage people to put their questions and comments, etc. All right. Okay, so the OU blended with personally generated overlays, selective impressions, and creative imaginations as instinctive, indoctrinated, inspired, and or initiated. Thus, not even the most controlled physical scientist can claim to accurately and completely see the objective universe. What he sees is his filtration and distortion of this through his subjective universe. What do we call that? Theory, right? Because people don't understand most of the shit we get in the scientific aspect or community is their theory based on what? How they filter it through their subjective universe. This is a fucking reality, right? Now, use that same term, as I said before. This is where they get their concept of who and what God is, because when you read the New Testament, the Greek word in the New Testament for everywhere you see the word God is the Greek word theos. The Greek word theos has root in the English word, or comes from the word theory. So when they're confessing to you, when you're reading that Bible from front to back, when you get to the New Testament, right, they're confessing to you that they call the creator theos in Greek because this is their theory or concept by way of how they view God through their subjective universe. But then they wanted to enforce their subjective universe upon you. So now they want you to look through their eyes and see God, creation, and your existence the way that they see it, or the way that they interpret it. When I say they, I'm talking about individuals that got together and put these books together and created this religious concept that was fueled through fear by this monotheistic God that controls everything in the universe. And they insulted you by putting right in your face, calling them theos. This is their theory. So they're saying they don't even know if God is real or not by the very title they give him in the Greek. Now, if you even go back into the Hebrew, right, and you go into the word that you'll see in 2 places, plural and singular, El Elo, the source, and Elohim, which just means a group of beings, right? Allahumma or Allah in Arabic. They're again just telling you they have no fucking clue. Look, most people that are religious have never even taken the time. And again, as I said a week or 2 ago, I'm not saying you need to sit down and be a linguistic scholar from front to back in all the Semitic languages, but you should know the basics. Because by just knowing the simple basics, you can dispel all the myths and illusions. Most religious people don't. They take everything for face value. They just think because some dude standing behind a pulpit holding a Bible and he went through some seminary and he's standing behind a fucking pulpit that he knows what he's talking about. That's not the case, okay? All right. Let's continue with this. All right, we're almost done. All right. So, which he has built up both consciously and subconsciously from innumerable sources since birth. So when the scientists are viewing this and giving his theories on it, what it's saying in here, he's pulling this from his experience from the very moment of birth to the present, because our experiences shape how we perceive things. And that perception is what we perceive as a reality or truth to us. So what might be one person's reality and truth may not be the next person's. So you might be hearing some information here today that maybe you don't accept as 100% truth, and you shouldn't if you haven't raised yourself up to the reality of it. That's the whole point. Nobody's telling you what to accept and what not. You as a god or a goddess make that decision. You understand? But this is part of understanding who and what you really are. Because when somebody's giving their theory on something, they're basically telling you how they're looking at it through their eyes based on their experiences and their perception. All right? More creative, artistic, mystical, etc. personalities may let their subjective universes run even more freely, to the point where the objective universe is only occasional and necessary relevance to them, right? And some such persons reach a stage where the SUs have completely replaced the OU. They become insane. I call them space cadets. These are your people that are so spiritual and deep and spooky. We all know these people. You all probably know a brother or sister you knew 5-10 years ago. They became so spiritual and spooked out that now you know by just talking with them, you could use the word insane. You could just tell they're not all there. Well, what's happened is they become so engulfed and engrossed in the subjective universe that they've lost sight of everyday reality. And most people escape and do that because they can't deal with the objective universe, the pressures that life brings in the everyday real world. So because they usually struggle or failing in those areas, they get so engrossed in the subjective universe, they become super spiritual. They become, I'm sure everybody knows somebody like that in some shape, form, or fashion. Trust me when I tell you, I'm sure. And this is why the next section, the interaction between the subjective and objective, is going to show you how to avoid that. Because look, there's something wrong. There's something not right. Okay. If you know a person that's, they're so deep and they can levitate and they're master healers, but they can't pay their mortgage. And there's something wrong with that. Or they can't pay their light bill, or they can't provide for their children. There's a disconnect there. And that's just a reality. See, we don't like to address that because a lot of spiritual circles, and I'm saying this consciously and unconsciously, and I'm saying all, but a lot of people have accepted being poor or being a failure or struggling as like it's spiritual. Like there's a greater reward after that. Don't be caught up in the illusions of the world. Don't chase materialistic things. Bullshit. You live in a world where there's tangibles that need to be attained in order for you to maintain yourself to the highest level of excellence. And if you think anything physical doesn't have a part to do with that, you're fucking stupid. Okay, completely stupid. So anybody that's teaching you not to be successful, teaching you not to, obtain wealth, I'm not saying to the point where that's all you do. I'm saying you should be successful, because how you live your life and your example should be a reflection of the information and the knowledge that you profess to have. Unfortunately, we got a lot of, gurus and scholars, but, these gurus and scholars are in their 40s and 50s living in mom's basement. You understand what I'm saying? There's a problem with that. There's a disconnect with that. You understand? If you can't see that, and I need to even explain it further, then you're probably one of those people. And again, don't take it personal. It is what it is. But we got to steer clear from that bullshit. So don't get so spiritual and deep, right? Negroes want to levitate and do all this spooky spiritual shit, but they can't even pay or take care of their kids. There's a disconnect in that, all right? Okay, then it goes on to say, in this sense, sanity is a measure of an individual's suppression of his subjective universe within socially sanctioned boundaries. So that level of what we're terming, that's why I said we got to be careful when you use that word insane, insanity. That's going to vary from individual to individual because they've created or suppressed those lines and boundaries. That's not going to be the same for others. Now, the adept that is in line and in sync, the magician that is working magic correctly and on this path and doing it the right way, which we're going to get into the last section, is able to create that unison and harmony between the objective and the subjective, and know how they mesh together and work, and how you're able to utilize that power and live a successful, productive, and powerful life. What do I mean by that? Okay. I'm going to get into it a little further here, but I'm going to go through some basics real quick. There's a time to, focus your energy on work and business. When it's that time, you got to buckle down, crack down. All the other shit got to be put to rest. There's a time, to get spiritual. And if you're in tune, your personal daemon will communicate this through you subconsciously. When you're slipping, if you're becoming a little too physical, maybe you're out having too much fun and you're just doing physical things and you're just hanging around bullshitting lazy, Your personal daemon will say, look, man, it's time you need to get to that altar and do some work. You need to do some healing work. You need to do this or that. There's a time for that. There's a time just to chill, lay back, have fun. There's a time to go out, eat, hang out. There's a time just to get into some good pussy or get some good dick, right? Plain and simple. Don't even sugarcoat it. I hate when motherfuckers there is an aspect of that, and one thing that holds people down, and let's be real, is the sex force. Because people don't know how to distribute or facilitate that sex force. Now, the level or intensity of that sex force or energy is going to vary from individual to individual. Now, some people might choose to go the route of suppressing it, be that through abstinence or be that through some spiritual system they belong to that teaches that. If that works for you, 9 out of 10 times it's creating more resistance on your subconscious. Some people choose to explore their sexuality. Regardless of what that is. And I'm not condoning sexual preference. That's personal. If you are, heterosexual, if you are lesbian, if you are bisexual, that's your business. But the thing is, step one is you must identify that's part of who and what you are. So if you're trying to suppress that, or you're embarrassed about that, or you can't come out, quote unquote, of the closet or the door of what you really are, be real with it. Because that's going to be something that lays dormant, and that's going to be something that's going to lay there, and it's going to come out at the wrong time when you don't need it to. And then it's going to be worse because you didn't address it when you had the opportunity. So sexual energy and sexuality is important. If you are craving to, I'm just going to keep it real with you. If you are craving to be in a sexual encounter with multiple people, that's your thing. If your mind isn't going to be at rest until you experience it, then you need to experience it. If you have fantasies or fetishes that need to be cleansed, like I say this jokingly, if you need to dip your big toe in chocolate milk and have somebody lick it off, I'm trying to be smart and funny, but I'm being a reality. These are things that suppress, and part of it comes from lack of communication with a significant other or not expressing ourselves, period. First and foremost, it's a taboo in a lot of spiritual circles because it's not addressed in its proper context. Because most spiritual circles address it from a male chauvinistic perspective. Do you understand what I'm saying? You understand? What I mean by that is it's always the male suppressing the female aspect. There's always the female must be submissive. There's always, monogamy for the female, and there's always polygyny or polygamy, as some say, for the male. And as I said before, if you go back and do your research, you will see in ancient culture, especially the Dravidian culture, women were practicing polygyny before men were. A lot of men don't like to hear that, but that's the reality. So we say on this path, if by choice, if a man decides he wants to have 3 and 4 wives, a woman can do the same. If you're not comfortable in your manhood with that, then you still got a lot of work to do mentally. Something's not right in here. Sexuality is a preference. It's a personal choice by the individual, however they choose to practice it. And again, I know where I stand, and I'm not afraid to take a stand. And I say this without discrimination. This is just me because it's probably the manly part of my nature, not really connected to the aspect of 2 men doing anything on any level. That's just me. But I won't judge, scrutinize, or ostracize somebody if that's their thing. But I will be clear on my position and stance. That's just not something that's part of my personal universe. And not because I have a phobia of it, or not because I'm going to use some religious rhetoric or some type of doctrine or dogma to support it. Like, it says in, spirituality, a man can't produce. See, that's a cop-out. Most people that spend all their time refuting it usually have homosexual tendencies, or the phobias they fear, they try to suppress it. I just say that because I have no desire for it. It's that simple. Now, this might sound a little chauvinistic, but I'll keep it real. I have no problem with, obviously, 2 women getting together, but that's just the man side of my nature. You understand? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to try to justify it or throw it to you in some certain way. That's just part of, again, as it's said in there, how our subjectives were shaped based on our experiences. I create my reality. That's my reality. But at the same token, if something is outside of that reality, and say I might see 2 men together, even though I'm not necessary, it's not something I vibe with, I'm not going to condemn, attack, persecute, and go off. I just know where I stand, and I wouldn't have no problem, expressing that to somebody. part of the problem why we have a lot of issues in life and in this world, people want to straddle the fucking fence and they don't want to take a stand on where do they stand. So I always laugh at these people with same-sex marriages or homosexuality, the ones that are against it. And I love how they justify it with a lot of religious myth and fears. And I ask them, what is it? What is your objection to it? And I'll fuck them up and go, well, no, I just don't agree with homosexuality between, let's say, two men, because I'm just not vibing with it. I'm not feeling it. I'm not using any religious myth or law or dogma to say, oh, men can't procreate. But if we all are gods and goddesses, we fuel our own desires. If somebody has the desire to carry that out, that's their personal fucking business. You understand? That's just me. That's just how I feel and look at it. Now, there might be somebody out there that looks at it totally different. And guess what? You have the right to. And I understand as carrying out a Luciferian mindset, I understand as being Luciferian that I know everybody's not going to be in accordance with in agreement of how I see things. So I can still respect how you see it, but I can also have the right to disagree. So you might say, well, no, this and that. And I said, that's cool, but it's just not how I see it. I love women. I love ass. I just love the feminine species. That's just how I look at it. And again, I'm not going to use anything to justify it. Now, I know in nature, some of it can sound chauvinistic. Well, why do you feel like it's okay for two women? Because watching two women together is sexy. That's it. I'm not going to give you no bullshit answer for it. You want me to get all spiritual and deep? Watching two sexy women together is a turn on. That's it. I'm not going to sit here and get spiritual and spooky for you. Because if I did that, I would be fooling myself, let alone trying to deceive and fool people watching. Any man that tells you that is full of shit. If some man sit there and tries to play holy art thou, all right, well, maybe there are some men that might be attracted to men and that doesn't do anything for them. You understand? That's the whole point. Okay, so you agree with now. If another woman comes and says, well, I think it's nasty for two women to be together. Well, I agree with that. That's that woman's personal choice. It's that simple. Stop trying to dictate how a person should think and feel. And it's the same thing. If a man, now I don't think I've ever run a straight heterosexual man. I don't think I've ever run into a straight heterosexual man that thought two women being together is nasty. Then they might want to question their sexuality. I'm just throwing this stuff out there to use it as an example. All that stuff we have to rid ourselves of, thinking in that pattern. Because if you really want to understand what this topic is about, this is what it's trying to get you to see. Now, the last thing I want to finish, and then we'll go into the chat. I just don't want to not finish. It's a short section. Now, how do we combine both of these? And I'm not going to get into the collective and the collective subjective universe. I want to finish with meshing the subjective and the objective together, or the objective. Once the simultaneous and permanent existence of the OU and the SU is recognized, much of the mystery of human history and behavior is no longer mysterious. It just requires examination of each such individual group and or event to identify the applicable OU forces and the various individuals' SU, subjective universes, through which they are being perceived and influenced. We just talked about that. So how you perceive them and how they were influenced, and this starts from your birth, from the moment you were birthed physically into this world to the present day. All of those influences, right? It's what your experience is, what shapes your perception and how you're going to look at things. So now the question is, does your culture and upbringing affect that? Ask yourself this. The answer is most definitely yes. Because now ask yourself, how much of my culture and upbringing has affected my subjective universe and how I perceive it and how I bring that in through my objective? Okay. Now, I'm not talking about per se where you are now. If you're somebody that's on this path now and you've made the change, well, I'm not talking about that because now you're working to it. But ask yourself prior to that, when you were on the road to transitioning into some other great spiritual system of awakening. And I'm sure we all did some period of reflection where we look back and said, damn, that shit really had me jacked up and jammed the fuck up. When you reflect back, and I know a lot of us, and don't fucking front like we fucking came out of your mom's pussy and we were just black magic and we were adepts. Stop, don't. A lot of us grew up Christian, Muslim, Jew. Think about quote unquote now, because you can do that now because of where you are at now. Reflect back to prior years before you were on this path and try to recollect a way you thought about things, whether it was sexuality, whether it was fear, whether it was God and how you perceived who and what God is. Just reflect back how you collectively thought about that prior. And now compare it to how you perceive it now. You probably would say to yourself, yeah, I was pretty jacked the fuck up at one point, but at the same token, at somewhere in between, you got to a point where you said, something's not right. I need to make a change here because there's some things that are not making sense, right? And that's what we call a DNA explosion, right? You hear this in a lot of spiritual circles. You hear this in metaphysics. When a person is having, quote unquote, that aha moment, right? We hear that term. They're having a DNA explosion. That's when truth becomes a reality to you as the individual. Because when you have a DNA explosion, it could be something as simple as you're reading a book and you get goosebumps and chills. That's a DNA explosion. It could be that you're in an intense personal visualization / meditation and you have a intense experience. That's a DNA explosion. Many things cause that, all right? Then it goes on to say, at the subconscious level, for instance, an individual may assume that everyone else sees the same reality that he or she does, when in fact, this is never completely the case. At the conscious level, the subjective universe can be both easier and more problematic to handle. Easier to the extent that the individual is making willful decisions about how much of his or her SU can successfully apply. More problematic insofar as others with their differing subconscious and conscious SUs may be present and involved. I'm going to stop there. All right. That was the basis. I know it was kind of covered a lot in a short section, but, and again, for people that might have came in late, that is the MindStar second edition by Dr. Michael Aquino, Aquino. You can pick that book up on Amazon Kindle. You can get it on the hard copy, wherever books are sold. I have versions of both. That's one of them books you want on your device and you want a hard copy of. Personally, that's just my opinion. I'm also going to attack some of his other work, Dr. Michael Aquino, who I've actually had some level of interaction with, communicating with him through social media in the last year or two, a couple times on and off. We'll get into some of his work, some of his newer work that just came out, because I think it's connecting certain topics that we talk about and taking it to a whole nother level. But anyway, that's MindStar second edition. Real quick, before I go to the chat, just before we take the questions and the comments, if you came in late, I just want to remind you, the reason why I came on today, it's possible I will not be coming on Tuesday night. I just don't think I'll be able to. Not sure. I still might, but I just basically came on today just in case I don't come on Tuesday. If I can come on Tuesday, I'll come on Tuesday. But I do want to keep Tuesday, as a regular night. I'm trying to keep Tuesday night as my regular night. We should be doing the show Tuesday. You probably also noticed Brother Ravana Noon isn't doing his show tonight. Brother's actually right now getting married. I don't know if some of y'all know that, but brother's actually tying the knot. So you probably won't see him on tonight. I wasn't able to get there. I think maybe some of you might be there that are in that area. But yeah, you won't see him on tonight from what I know. And then Tuesday, if I can come on, I will, come on. Also, I mentioned the event. If you got the flyer, and again, I'm going to go to the chat in a minute. The flyer for this month's events was sent out. I explained it in the beginning. It's going to be 2-day events real quick. I'm going to run through it again real fast, short version. Friday from 9 to 5, there will be various different presentations, workshops. I'll be doing a couple. As I mentioned, Sister Sonia we'll be doing a couple. Brother Jack. We'll have a couple other presentations on different black magic topics, herbs. I know Sonia's going to do something on the female or the feminine working magic, as an adept, as a female. And from that perspective, we'll be doing stuff on demonic integration, Luciferianism. So that's going to be from 9 to 5. We'll take a break. And this is the 26th on Friday. We'll take a break for lunch. We'll reconvene, finish up at 5. When we're done, people can go back to their hotel, to their house, We'll recuperate for a minute. We'll gather back at 8 o'clock, and we will partake in a ritual. I'm just going to tell you the basics. I ain't going to get into detail with it. We will be doing a ritual activating the Luciferian energies of Lucifer, right? All I can tell you is it's a male-female ritual. There's parts to it for male-female. We'll be working with aspects of the chakra in this ritual, literally. That's all I'm going to tell you about that. That's the main working for Friday evening. Then on Saturday at 12:30, that's on the 27th, I'm going to do a class on the journey of the Black Adept, kind of tying everything in that we did for the last day and a half. And that'll be followed with an open discussion, question and answer, where you guys can be able to dialogue, put your input, ask questions, etc. We will then break from that and gather on the beach at 7 o'clock later that evening. And we will be setting up an altar on the beach, and we will be doing a drumming ceremony for the Eagle, the Orishi, and the Loa. We will literally be setting up an altar out on the beach. I want to save the surprise. We'll get to that a little bit later. So we will drum for them on the beach. There will be a ceremony out there. For those that are there, we'll participate in that ceremony. We will leave there, get some grub, and finish up at the cemetery around 10 o'clock. 10:30 at night with a final working / ritual. And that'll culminate to 2 days of events. I did put on the flyer. There is a $25 registration fee that covers both days. I prefer you pay that when you arrive. So this way I don't have to, if somebody pays and doesn't show up, I don't have to worry about refunding money. Now, if you know you're 100% coming and you want to pay it by PayPal, you can do that. You just send me an email. There's a different PayPal email to send money to. Those that work with me know it, but I'll send it to you. And again, it's by invite only. So you do need to call us and let us know you want to come. We need to have a brief discussion with you to make sure you kind of have a general idea of what we're doing, and make sure you kind of something you want to do, especially the working, because we get a lot of people that, it's not for curiosity seekers. I just don't recommend it. I can tell you it's going to be good. I know it's going to be good, this one. This one's a little special because we've planned some different things, because we got more people for this event coming from out of state. The sister that I mentioned to you from England, who I spoke to a few days ago, she has booked her flight. So we got somebody coming from England. We got somebody coming from Seattle. That's a trip itself. Everybody's taking a flight from Seattle. That's about a 6-hour flight. So this will be a great experience. And I guarantee you'll leave this experience getting something from it where you can apply to your everyday life. All right, so that's what we got coming up, 26th and 27th. We want to stick to a strict itinerary because we got a lot to go over in 2 days. So we want to really stay in the time frame parameter so we can get it all in. Because as you know, when you're on this path, time flies by and the shit goes a lot faster than you really ever anticipated. All right, so let's go through the chat. Hopefully you guys put some questions in there. Hopefully. I'm going to scroll to the top. So keep that in mind as I'm going through the questions in the chat. I'm going through the top. So don't think I'm ignoring your question. I'm going to start up at top. So first and foremost, peace and greetings. If I didn't greet you personally, I see Sister Trina in the beginning, Brother K. Edwards, Gypsy Goddess, Brother Duma, Dan, etc. Peace and greetings if I didn't greet you. Also, when I did send that flyer and email out, I also resent out, the information for online classes that are going to begin in the middle of November. I know some of you have already signed up and paid. I just want to remind you, you can pay up until the day before. You can break it up into as many payments as you need to. I'm fair. I work with people. And for those that took the first class, the length and the amount of time that was put into it, it's definitely well worth the price. And I'm actually a bit cheaper than most people are charging. I try to stay fair and reasonable. I'm not trying to kill nobody's pockets, but I got to do what I got to do to be compensated for the time, effort, and energy that I put into it. And I'm always dealing with people on a fair level. I don't think anybody can complain that I've ever done anybody wrong or taken anybody or any shady business practices. That's not how I get down. I don't do this for a living. I want to make that clear. I have my own successful business career. I do this on the side because I love to do it, but it does take away from my personal time with my children, etc. So I need to be compensated for that time. That's just how I work at it. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to, again, just like I was when I was talking about the sex thing earlier, I'm not going to sugarcoat it or bullshit you. That's what it is. Most of us get up every day and run our business and do what we got to do because we want to get paid. Don't fucking fool yourself. I ain't going to make it spiritual. It is what it is. All right. Anyway. All right. So let's see what we got. Peace, brother Timothy Williams. What the hell's going on? This thing's fucking, I hate when this thing jumps. All right. All right, we're looking for some questions. I'm skipping the personal conversations. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Trina hurt. I know you had some pneumonia. Hopefully, I think you should be better by now, I would hope. Okay. All right. So the first question I see is by Cobra Queen. Earlier, that was around 5:23. So she typed this in a little bit over an hour ago. Where does Gin Magic fall in this work? Gin Magic falls in this work wherever you want it to. And Gin Magic work is a powerful tool. Matter of fact, one of the rituals we did last year, the initiation ritual, which we plan on probably doing that January. We want to do that once a year. We have a ritual that we created, the initiation into the chaos and darkness order, and there's an aspect of Gin Magic incorporated in that ritual. A lot of Eastern mysticism. Gin Magic can be connected. Now, I don't know if what time you came on. Obviously, you came on about maybe a few minutes after. In the beginning, I made it clear. The unique thing about this path, when working with the subjective and the objective, in relation to this topic, you can incorporate any spiritual system, whether it could be hoodoo voodoo, it could be Palo, it could be Gin Magic, it could be vampirism, Luciferianism. You can utilize whatever spiritual system you want, because when you use your subjective to fuel it and to shape it of how you want it to work, that's what gives it its form. That's what gives it its substance. So for an example, if we're working with Gin Magic, you can take specific gins, right? Say you're doing an invocation to activate certain gins in Gin Magic, specific ones that deal or work with certain areas or scenarios, be it finances, being strengthening yourself, be it giving you power, knowledge, or wisdom. It's no different than working with, say, something that everybody's familiar with on the surface, such as the Egyptian pantheon. You're still working with archetypes. You give those archetypes shape and form based on how you perceive them. Now, how we perceive them, and when we are tapping into that isolated consciousness, we give that shape and form and substance, because now we're not worshiping them. We are activating what they represent. So you can utilize Gin Magic. You can utilize whatever system you have adapted to your path of self-mastery to work for you. Now, I myself personally have worked with Gin Magic or what I like to call Arab and Eastern mysticism. I work with a lot of systems in the assassin orders that you might see, or what they call on the surface. There's a good book I would recommend. I actually talked about it on a video a while back. The Assassins, the Militia of Heaven by James Wasserman. And James Wasserman gets into some of the Sufis and some of the assassin black magical orders that practiced Gin Magic, because a lot of them were influenced by Arab and Eastern mysticism. So it is a very powerful path for those that might be familiar with and worked with it. Now, I got connected to it because prior to when I was not on this path, going back 20 or so years ago, I was a devout Muslim. So when I encountered Sufism back in the day, it kind of led me to other areas. Now there's different levels of Sufism too, because Sufism is kind of really in itself, they may not admit it on the surface, it's very Luciferian in nature itself, because you're tapping into the essence of the creator that resides within you and your connection to it, to nature, etc. Sufism really hides or masks itself hides behind Islam, but in essence really has nothing to do with Islam when you understand it at its core. Now, that's why you'll find in some Islamic countries, they're totally against Sufism. And some people that practice it have to kind of keep it secretive, where in other countries, it's not as secretive. Now, there's different levels of it, because when you practice, for an example, the Sufis out of what we call in Nubia, Aswan, or Upper Sudan, it's practiced in a little different than the Whirling Dervish in Turkey, etc. But in essence, the mystical or the spiritual teachings of it, there will be levels of similarity. Now, when you go into the assassin orders, these were the men, or you'll see them dressed in black. You'll see them over time through history. They covered their face. They had a veil over their face. They were sent to, quote unquote, do the dirty work. You can trace them back during the times of the Crusades and even further back. Your whole Star Wars trilogy, Darth Vader and the Siths, this is all connected to this, the Brotherhood of Set. All of these orders were really the same. They just, as they went through different cultures and times, they adjusted it according to their culture and their time. The movie Assassin's Creed was showing you a lot of that. A lot of those individuals that practiced black magic and really worked with the jinn, right? One of the phrases was, one must go into the dark to do the work of the light. Well, anybody that works with jinn magic and works any of that spiritual system of the assassins knows that. The ritual we did last year, which probably was it's a long ritual. It puts the candidate through a lot of stuff. We're going to do that again. That's going to be coming up soon. I would suggest, one, and we make sure of this, you need to be in decent physical condition. That's number one. You need to be able to stand. We do ask people if they have any physical, ailments. We do accommodate them to the best we can. You do encounter the jinn in that ritual, and that's in a collective group setting. Now, it's a little different, as I said before, like any other ritual, as opposed to doing it individually. But long story short, you can incorporate and work with that on this path. All right. What else we got here? Okay, I'm not saying too many questions. All right, so Nathan 22 typed in. This is the next question I see. Again, I'm just going to skip some of the personal conversations between you guys. All right. He types in, I'm stuck at the know thyself. I feel like I know, but at the same time, it's something I couldn't really explain. But that's the answer in itself. So you are connected. That shows by the very fact you still got that feeling that there's more to know, shows you're linked in. Because if you really thought to yourself and said, poof, okay, nobody's ever going to wake up and go, oh, I know everything. I got it all figured out. I'm 100% certain this is what it is. No, that hunger and thirst and that quest is what keeps you going. You understand? So it's not that you're stuck on the know thyself. It just means it still needs to be maybe formatted and more clearer to your subconscious so you can put it into perspective. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it really is hard to explain and put it into words, because you're trying to put a personal experience, what your experience, into physical words, which can be a little bit difficult because not everybody may be able to connect or relate because you're coming from your personal perspective. So in essence, what I would say to your comment is it's actually confirming that you're on the path or you're in the right direction, so to say. But obviously, there's a lot more work to be done. We're constantly working on this path. We're constantly never satisfied. We're constantly always seeking. We're constantly always knowing. And guess what? There's always going to be points and moments where we just don't fully always get it all the time, or we're not really certain. But that's why you got to continue to study, do the work, carry out your rituals, your personal work, etc., whatever you want to call it. This is all going to bring that clarity and that realization of the personal truth you need to raise yourself to, so you can now, have that clarity that you're seeking. So, yeah. Only typed in, my mantra has been, I forgive me. Now, yeah, earlier when I was talking about, if you maybe was somebody that was sexually abused and you have a trauma that you've been suppressing because you haven't faced it or dealt it with it, as far as putting it into perspective. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people that have been sexual abuse victims at an early age, it's very common that they blame themselves, even in their adulthood lives. They say that they did something wrong, or they sent out mixed signals, and that's not true. And like only typed in, step one is forgiving yourself, because if that happened to you as a child, in no way, shape, form, or fashion should you ever hold yourself accountable or responsible. Because any adult with common fucking sense and reasoning should know, if they are an adult, any child is off boundaries. Remember one thing, one principle, not a religious law. And any great spiritual practitioner on this path, whether they have an organization or not, or just claim to be a practitioner, will tell you there's two things we don't do on this path. Okay, I want to make this clear. And I'm going to tell you this to many of the sacred orders that I belong to, and one of the main ones I belong to now. One of their principles is we don't harm children and we don't harm animals. Okay, so if you're one that's not familiar with this path and you think real people that practice black magic sacrifice animals and blood, that's just the furthest thing from the truth. That's one principle. Well, the two main principles. Some you have to take an oath on that, literally. Same thing in OTO, for an example. I'll use a more familiar system. We don't harm children and we don't harm animals. So if you were an abuse victim sexually as a child, first and foremost is you must forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for blaming yourself, because you in no way, shape, form, or fashion. For an example, how can a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old child be held responsible for some fool in their 20s, 30s, or 40s sexually taking advantage of somebody, whether you're male or female? And I know it's more difficult for males. And again, I want to make this clear. I'm not saying this because I was ever sexually abused, because I wasn't. I do know many people that were. So I want to make it clear. I can only relate to a certain level. I don't have the experience of it, but I have dealt with many clients. And I found out over the years in dealing with clients and doing work, it has amazed me how common it is. It seems like 1 out of every 3 people I run into has been sexually abused on some type of level. And I found the hardest ones are the men. It's an ego thing. There's a shame factor, and it's not something they like to talk about or address, but they realize that addressing it kind of was something that they needed to do. So yes, first and foremost, forgive yourself, because you can never be held accountable for that. All right, what else we got? Baffa Marga types in, she's trying to be slick. I'm digging your necklace, Beniti. That's because she made it. Let me throw that out there. I know I've mentioned this before in the past. We have people in the room I know that provide services and products. There's a few people in here. I know Oni does. I know Sister Baffa Marga. I don't know why I keep calling her that. She makes jewelry. I know Sister Sonia makes soaps and herbs, and some of them have their own websites. So you might want to maybe side message them and get their contact info. I've said on many videos in the past, we should keep business amongst ourselves, especially products that are related to ourselves to the best of our ability. So, get familiar with people I say doing it in here. I don't want to turn this into a fucking flea market, but I think we all know, who. And if somebody does, you could type your email in and let them side contact you. And I know personally, I can attest to Sister Baffa and Sister Sonia, because I actually have experienced their products. I've actually seen them, smelt them, touched them, and interacted with them. So I can attest. And I know, for an example, Sister Sonia puts a lot of time and energy into her work. And she's got not just clients, quote unquote, that are on this path. It's not just, let me make that clear too. You don't have to be on this path to buy some of these things. It's kind of marketed to anybody that might be interested. So I know she's got people that she sells to too that, quote unquote, may not be on this path. But anyway, yeah, I just want to throw that out there. All right, so Sister Onia typed, and this one I was talking about, to go back to Africa people that kill me, right? She said, I was just discussing this, going to someplace besides here, the USA, but it's really worse than here. People have to learn how to navigate through the system instead of trying to fix it. And that's true. Bottom line is, keep it real with people 100%. I'm not saying that none of us can go over to Africa and adapt and live a happy, successful, and productive life. But I would put my money on it that more than 50% of you motherfuckers would come back. Okay? Because the reality is, I was talking in reference to that earlier about knowing yourself. See, we like to act as if we're not Americanized in any shape, form, or fashion. See, it's one thing putting on cultural attire and making all these claims, but it's another thing going to live in that environment because you weren't raised in that environment. And then you're going to find out it's not what you thought it was. Do you really think everybody's over in Africa and everything is, you think it's that shit 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? You don't think they got problems and crime and civil war and disease and death and destruction? Well, you think you're going to leave here and go over there and none of that shit exists? And in most cases, a lot of those places, it's fucking worse than it is here. That's a reality. So that's why one thing as far as I adjusted when dealing with the Orishi, dealing with voodoo, Palo, that's why I more now line myself up with the voodoo hoodoo aspect of it. Why? Because as I did research, I found out not just my ancestors, a lot of people in this country that practice that spiritual system, that's where it got its origin. The voodoo methodology comes from the first slaves that came here. And I like to gravitate towards that because it's diverse. It doesn't have all those restrictions on it, like, say, Santeria, etc. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to identify with part of our American heritage. When I say American, yeah, I'm talking about the original Native Americans. Yes, if that makes you feel more comfortable, okay? Because remember, not everybody came through here via slavery, right? Go read one of my favorite authors, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. We were already here. The Presence of the Moors and the Olmecs in America. He, to me, is the most authoritative teacher on showing how some melanated people were always here prior to Pangea and the continental drift, before the land masses were separated. You had people that literally walked over because the land masses were all connected. Now, there's different theories on the time frame of that. I don't want to get into that. I couldn't give a shit. The point being is, factually, it can be proven not everybody came over here on slave ships. When I do my research and I research my genealogy on both sides, I can connect to that aspect. So I'm making my declaration. I'm making where I stand. I ain't trying to leave fucking America. I'm here because I know America originally belonged to me. This is my soil. This is where I genetically trace my roots. Now, I know it has its origin and essence. When you go back in the lineage, yes, I can trace it back to Northeast Africa. I can trace it back to Libya. I understand all that when I trace my bloodline. But I'm saying in essence, being a direct generational descendant from them people that controlled this soil, I'm not on that go back to Africa kick. I'm talking about taking over and taking control and being in control here. Fuck that. Because if anybody's ever done any traveling, and I've done some traveling into some of those areas over the last 15 to 20 years, it's not cracked up to be what you think it is, okay? Now, if you've been there and you've got the experience, and I know some of you have, and maybe you've lived there, and you like it and you adapt, well, that's fine too. I'm just saying it's not for everybody. I'm not saying it's not for anybody because I'm sure there are some people that have done it successfully. I'm more or less speaking in the now. For a lot of these people that are here now that talk all that shit about it all the time, they're not understanding it. Trust me when I tell you. All right. Only in reference to when I was talking about the incident that you guys might have seen, which I thought was funny, with that brother Minister Henke, the McDonald's scandal. You know, you guys probably heard his side of the story, or whatever. But he ate the fries. Don't judge him. My thing is, again, when you're on this path and you don't put yourself up on that pedestal, if you feel like that's your choice. I'm not going to get into the debate over the quality of the food. We already know that it's not good quality food. But we also know, with having basic common sense, if you take things in within small limitations, if you take things in with discipline, it's not going to fucking kill you. Don't front. We've all probably slipped in and out at some point. Maybe you're one of them holier thou vegans. You don't go in there at all. That power to you. But the point is that is all fine on this path. But if I want to go into motherfucking McDonald's, I can do that and not be judged for it because I ain't laying claim to being some comedic vegan master spiritual guru. You see, you put yourself in harm's way, and you put yourself in the way of being shot down because now you got to take the heat that comes with it. So the beauty of being on this path and being your own God or goddess, if you want to walk into any of those places and you make a conscious decision, regardless of the fact that you know the food may or may not be good for you, that's your business. And you don't have to worry about being judged for it because guess what? If somebody sees you chowing down on some McDonald's fries, If it was me, I'd have just been real with the people and said, I was craving, I ate them shits. That's all. I ain't gonna get no spiritual explanation for it. Like I was saying earlier, if you're craving some ass, as a man, you're craving some ass. Don't try to get spiritual. Oh, I need to feed my sexual appetite so I can tap in spirit. I love the Negroes that just have tantric sex all the time. Them motherfuckers get me sick to my stomach. Sex is spiritual. Everything is spiritual. Look, be real with yourself, Negro. Sometimes you just like to fuck. Okay, don't come with none of that. I'm comedic and I do tantra with my woman. So every time you have sex with your woman, it's tantra. You don't just have straight, raw, aggressive, I want to knock it down sex. You don't just have sometimes gentle, passionate sex, right? You don't ever get that urge to do any of that stuff. The fuck out of here, that bullshit. My whole point is that was in relationship to earlier with understanding who and what you are is the first step to claiming to be conscious and awoke. Not defining it by somebody's definition on some spiritual system, not by some creed that some spiritual system lives by, right? Because I hate when people, I'm a god and I'm a goddess, right? You hear a lot of people say that in the Kemetic community, right? But they give you a basic watered down definition of it that they read somewhere. And I say, I don't want something that you read from a book. I want your definition. That's why you might still see me wear this symbol, because whether, again, the mainstream 5%ers may not agree with it, but they're very Luciferian in nature because they don't believe in a spook God. They believe they are God of the universe, right? They believe they control everything. They don't deal with a mystery or a spook God. If that's not Luciferian in nature, and I told you, my very beginnings as a freshman, sophomore in high school, when I was first exposed to the 5% nation of gods and earth, that was my very beginning foundation. I still hold on to it to a certain degree, though, I'm speaking for myself, though I know a lot of mainstream 5%ers will not agree with a lot of the doctrine on the left-hand path because that's where their religious influence comes in. But I've removed all that spookism. When you look at the 120, as I've mentioned before in the past, it passes very Luciferian in nature because it promotes self-deity shit. It promotes you are God. And that's why I still connect with certain aspects of it. So I've had people say, you can see me wear this symbol. You can see me wear a bracelet for Oshun. You can see me wear something for necromancy, right? You know why I can do that? Because I can motherfucking do that. Because I choose to fucking do that. And I can take all of those systems and incorporate them and make them work for me. Now, the outsider may look at that and say, that's bull. You can't do that. You know why you're saying that? And you're coming with all that restriction? Because you've been programmed and told that. That's why I said earlier, you can take any spiritual system and adapt it to your personal path of mastery. So I can look at the teaching of the nation of the gods and earth, and I see the Luciferian aspect of it, and I apply it on a daily basis. If I run into gods, I can build with them. I still know my lessons, and they'll always be embedded in me. You understand? But I can also take that to a whole different level in my private working. I can even look at this very symbol when we work with sigils and symbols, and this takes on a whole different meaning to me. The 7 points, right? They'll tell you that, the 7 represents God being birthed into the universe, coming out the womb of the woman, right? They'll tell you the sun. Sun represents God in the universe. 7 represents the black man being birthed into the universe, right? The moon represents the female, right? The star represents the child, sun, man, woman, child. Then you have the 16 points, right? Which represent the different aspects of the brown and yellow race, from the lightest of light to the darkest of dark, right? Each point from the beginning of the point to the center, now you're dealing with a combination of 120. When you add up all the different points and the degrees, 45 degrees on 4 different points, and then it's even broken down further, 72 and a half on the other points. And when you times it, you get the total of the 120. Takes on different meanings, but you could take that and shift it to a whole bunch of different levels, right? Some will say when you look at the moon reversed, facing one way, it's the womb of the woman when she's pregnant. Now think of metaphorically what this represents. And then when you turn it the other way, she's giving birth and the child was birthed. This is all symbolic. Don't look at the literal shit of it. I don't look at the literal aspect of it. You understand? You have to, and then the colors, right? But if you really look at the 7-pointed star from the symbol, is 8 points on the star that's around it, right? If you've seen the star of chaos on the left-hand path, all you got to do is take the 7 and the other implements out of it, and you have chaos. So when I look at this star now, what it represents to me All of that stuff is embedded in the middle of this chaos because all of it was birthed out of the chaos. Man, woman, child, sun, moon, stars, creation, right? All of this was birthed out of chaos. So that's what we call in the nation your add-on build, because that's how I see it as God. Now, another God may not agree with it, and they don't have to. But when you ask how do you see it as God, that's how I see it. So how I might look at the symbol in relation to what we were talking about earlier, perception and truth and how your subjective universe was shaped from birth till present, I'm going to look at it like that now based on where I'm at in my spiritual evolution. So it's a symbol that holds many significance to me. That's why I wear it. And I encourage anybody that wears any symbols, be it Ankhs, be it Baphomet symbols, you better understand why you're wearing it, and be able to explain that shit. We don't do, a symbol should hold a significance to you. It should mean something to you on your spiritual path and study. I know a lot of people wear it in a lot of these groups because it's trendy. If I'm wearing a symbol, and those that know me, I probably have over 25 to 30 different type of chains that I wear off and on. That's because it's reflecting the mood of where I am in mentally. So if you see me wearing a Baphomet chain, a Samuel and Lilia, you best believe I just was doing some work where I'm connected to that energy at the moment. I'm wearing this today because that's where my mindset is at today. If you see me wearing, the dagger with Baphomet, I'm on some more aggressive, Palo African type of shit. Okay, if you see me wearing the Papa Legba sigil, then you can best believe that the energy that I'm tapping into and connecting to at the moment is Papa Legba. So let me explain it is. That's what I was talking about in the very beginning and in previous videos about being versatile. Do you understand? All of those paths are connected to this. They're connected on how you connect them. Do you understand? So it's very important. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm just skipping the personal comments. Okay, what else we got? I'm just seeing a lot of personal comments. I'm not going to read. Okay. To the vegan thing that came up earlier, and I was mentioning a lot of people think that they're vegan because they go on the fresh market or Whole Foods, and they think everything they're getting in there is organic and whole, and it's not. Okay, some of the shit in there, as we all know, there was a big thing several months back, or it might have been end of last year, where Whole Foods got busted for a lot of their organic meats and vegetables being shipped from China, and they weren't organic. Okay. Like I said before, if you're not plucking it, growing it, and plucking it from the ground yourself, it's not organic. Okay. So don't get yourself caught up in that illusion, because unfortunately, in certain circles, and again, I'm not knocking you if you're in here and you're a vegan, power to you. I was a vegan for probably like 15 fucking minutes. Couldn't do that shit. I know I can't because I got O positive blood. I need more aggressive levels of protein. Not that I'm a heavy, crazy meat binger. Once in a while, I might eat beef, good beef. If it is, I don't eat that cheap shit. Definitely don't eat fast food beef at McDonald's and Burger King. Mostly chicken, fish, turkey, but blood type has a lot to do with understanding, who you are and what you should and should not eat. So you should educate yourself to that. But what I am saying is veganism has become a religion almost in itself, and we don't want to do that. Okay, what else we got here? Yeah, this comment I want to read by Oni because it kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier. She said her and her daughter were literally just talking about the difference between a hustle and a job, where you use your craft or skill to obtain an income to support your family. And got to understand the difference between the two. I'm not knocking the hustle because I came through that lineage. Those that know me from back in the day, my times on the streets in New York, a few of you actually met me during them times. I used to peddle on Delancey and Essex Street. We used to call it peddling. I used to set up on Fordham Road in the Bronx, Jamaica Avenue. I used to set up in the train station on Parsons and 179th. I used to hustle all types of shit. I used to hustle bootleg cassettes. I don't know if y'all remember the cats back in the day with the shopping cart with the socks and the underwears. I did that shit. I sold books. I sold incense. I sold oils. I used to go to the wholesale spots in Midtown Manhattan, all the Korean and the Chinese spots, and buy all the sterling silver jewelry. I used to set up a table with jewelry. I did all those things. So I'm not knocking the hustle. But I got to a point in my life when I got older and said, all right, that was good for young man shit. But now I'm a grown ass man. The world is changing. Society is changing. You can't build a life on that no more. You understand? Now, I know there's some people out there still doing it, but I guarantee you, they ain't supporting a family of 5, 6, or 7 on it. They might be taking care of themselves, 1 or 2. I mean, shit. Look at half of the Black Hebrew Israelites. Some of them who I know to this day sit there and stand on the corner all weekend and all night talking about how the white man is the devil, and some of them Negroes work all week for the devil. This person that they call the devil. Come on, man. No, we got to put that childish bullshit way of thinking to the side. So what I'm saying is, don't confuse a hustle with a real profession, a job, or a career. It's 2 different things. And that's what I mean. I'm not knocking the hustle. I'm just saying, know the difference between the 2. And I'm saying that from a perspective of somebody that used to hustle like that. And I did that for years, from being an early teen, probably to my late 20s, early 30s. Okay. I was out there on them streets 13, 14 years. Summer, winter, spring, fall, rain, snow, sleep, didn't matter. I was out there hustling, get my money out. And I sold whatever I can get my hands on wholesale. Again, for those that are from other areas might have it. And I know some of y'all that are here in this room from New York, you remember them days, the bootleg cassettes. Remember the $5 bootleg cassettes, right? This is before the CDs now, okay? We was out there with the bootleg cassettes, man. How many times we got raided? You know, didn't have peddler license. Cops would come take our shit. I'm telling you, I hustled socks. If it was wintertime, what'd you see? I had a cart full of gloves and hats. Umbrella, that's what we did. You understand? That's what a hustler does. And if you live in New York and you know where the wholesale spots are, anybody can go out in the streets of New York and hustle if you got common sense. That's what I did. And some of y'all know me. Again, my spots with Delancey and Essex. I'll be on the Lower East Side. Occasionally, Fordham Road, way uptown. I'd be over there on certain days because I knew what days the money was good. But I'd stay home base, which was close to where I live, Jamaica, Queens. I'd act Springfield Gardens, 167th and Farmers. But I would be in that Jamaica Ave area, be in the subways, hustling. So I'm saying this from a perspective. I'm not saying it from a person that never hustled. And anybody that knows me, to be a hustler, you got to be able to talk. And I can talk. Those that know me know I can talk. I could put shit in my hand and sell it to you and tell you it's jewelry, 14 karat gold. That's just a gift. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm not knocking the hustle. I'm just saying there comes a point on this path where you become a mature, responsible adult. And you got to change your way of thinking. That's all I'm saying. All right. Yeah, Gypsy Goddess writes, and it's true. You're 1,000% hetero. Your energy is epic. You're not homophobic, just woman oriented. And I'm not. I want to make that clear. I just not something I vibe with. Like Sister Sony typed in after that, why would we want to agree with anything all the damn time? Think how boring the world would be if everybody agreed on everything and thought the same way. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. That's what quote unquote this new world order shit is. The very people that are teaching you against the new world order, think about it. At the same time, they're actually enforcing the new world order because they're telling you, you know, they're trying to do this to us and make us think the same way. And they're trying to control the economy, this and that. But they want you to come in their little group organization and think their way. Hello, does anybody see anything wrong with that? So that's the whole point. All right. Gypsy Goddess typed in, most women got lesbian fantasies too. If they don't, that's fine. But lots don't admit it. But as a hetero woman, I would never place a woman where I place men. Good point. And again, however you perceive that whole sexual thing, that's your perspective. And it's your God or goddess given right. But I bring it up early in relation to understanding who and what you really are. I brought that up. The topic came up not just to randomly talk about sex. The topic came up because most people struggle in the areas of their sexuality and their sexual energy because they don't know where to put themselves in perspective of it. Some are in denial to what their nature is in regards to that, or some just suppress their desires and fantasies because they don't know how to carry them out. Well, this path of indulgence shows you the correct way to carry them out with discipline and with being very aware and alert of what you're doing. So it doesn't mean you just recklessly abandon doing, but it doesn't mean you completely suppress it either. So there is that aspect. If 2 people, 3 people, whatever it might be, are on like mind and are communicating and on the same level, that's their business. It don't matter what the situation or scenario is. That's their business. And we are not to judge anybody on that. That's their business. We are not to pass our hypocrisy on to people like that when we might be doing the same shit. That's the shit that kills me, because most people that talk shit about people that in regards to those areas, they're usually doing the same shit. Trust me when I tell you. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're almost at the bottom here. Yeah, I see this comment. I got Mujahid 72. Yeah, I sold soaps, oils, and incense back. Yeah. So brother, you can relate. I mean, my main spot that I worked to death, right on the corner of Delancey and Essex, right when you came off the J. I had a table out there for several years. I mean, my clientele was so good. I was giving people credit on Monday. Literally, they would come in, they would get a bundle of incense. They might get 3, 4, 5 bottles. Now, that was back in the day when, the roll-on oil market wasn't saturated, and we were getting $10 for a roll-on back then, not no more. Now, because the market's so saturated, you can get them for $5, whatever, $3. But back then, when, there was only a select few that had good shit. There was a spot back in the day called Gold Star in Midtown Manhattan that I used to get some fragrances there that you couldn't get at like Medina and all these other places. So when you had your little secret spot that nobody knew about, you had your own clientele. I would have people that would come to me for this red Egyptian musk and this oil called Jamaican fruit. People have tried to mimic it after, but it's not the same. And I literally would have people that would come through on a Monday, pay, take shit, and lo and behold, they'd come off the train Friday, come right up to me when they got that check, got that money, and they would pay me. I mean, I kid you not. There was literally, it's changed now because the market's a bit saturated. You could still hustle. I mean, there was times on a Friday, especially in the beginning of the month, you might make $300, $400, $500 in one day. That's just how it was. You were hustling. You understand what I'm saying? Same thing with the cassettes. But that's when 50 wasn't rated. They would even rate out jewelry tables back in the day because you had to have a license and something. Depending on where you were. They were a little more lenient back then. Now it's a little different. Since Giuliani, when he came in office, things changed drastically. He cleaned a lot of that shit up. So you can't really pedal freely anywhere or hustle freely anywhere. You can, but you got to be a little bit more, good at doing it. But yeah, it was productive for those times because that was the time we were living. And shit, I remember one night hustling underwears and socks. I'm probably 3, 4, 5 hours made about $150, $200. But when you're young and dumb, some of it you blow, and it's not sometimes a good thing to have in a young man's hand in their early 20s. Got to remember back then, when I know about credit card, I'm going back to the, late 80s to early 90s. It's not really a good thing for a young person to have a wad of cash in their hand walking through Manhattan, because then you start getting into shit you probably don't want to get into. Well, I want to say you don't want to get into. You start getting into young man shit. Because back then in Manhattan, before they cleaned it up and made it Disney, you had all the sex spots up in there. You had all the peep booths. We used to all go in and hang out and chill. You had the strip clubs, right? You had all those little spots we used to go fucking piss money away at, Then you had the karate movies, right? 42nd. It's going in, piss some money away. Then all the pool halls and all the, the arcades. That was when there was real arcades, Pac-Man, Asteroids, Star Wars. You know what it was like to just take a $10 bill, get a roll of fucking quarters or a roll of tokens and shit. You want it, that's the shit we did when we were young. We had fun doing it. I don't regret none of it. I probably pissed away a shitload of money. I don't regret not one bit of it. You want to know why? Because it shaped, like we were reading earlier in Mindstar, it influenced and shaped how I perceive my subjective universe. And those experiences, I can draw upon them and apply them into other areas of my life in useful ways to assist me with certain things I might be going through. You may not think something like that can have an effect, but it does. What did it teach me? It taught me understanding both perspectives of having a lot of money impulse and blowing it. But then now I know how that felt, and I know how now it feels being older and mature, I know that that's not going to take care of paying for houses and cars and children. You understand? But when I was by myself, it was a great hustle because I was living like a rock star, right? Because I ain't had a care in the world. You got to understand, $200-300 in a pocket of somebody that ain't got shit to take care of. That's like having $3,000. You understand? Going to steakhouses, eating the best food. You know what I mean? Doing this in your early 20s, but that's when you was living the young man's lifestyle. I ain't had no wife, no kids. I didn't have a care in the world. You understand? I bring all that up. That's why I was bringing up. Don't confuse the hustle for a profession. And I know when I reflect back on it back then, I was hustling. I was a hustler. Nothing wrong with it, and I'm not knocking anybody that's doing it. But I will tell you, when you get to a certain point in your life, you need to assess your situation. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Gypsy God has typed in, we always need a backup plan and more than one stream of income, but mainly men with a family need to be serious about their income. That's not a joke. And that's true. Because think about, I also got to reflect on how times have changed, right? Credit, not that credit wasn't the huge thing. As everything is credit now. Paper money is almost obsolete. So that's changed in nature. Technology has changed in nature. Reality is you really can't do shit now without credit. So the other thing you have to factor in, if you're living and you're in the system, which most people are, I know you don't get into that Morris shit. You got to remember, if you're just out there hustling on the streets and then you don't have any residual income going into your retirement or Social Security, and hopefully that's still around when we get old, you're not going to have any money to retire. Because when you're not capable of hustling anymore physically, what do you have to fall back on? Unless you had some master plan and invested and you made your money work. Now, I did some of that to an extent, which I'm glad, but times have changed. And you're not a real man if you can't provide for yourself and your family, okay? I'm not talking about a woman. It's hard enough for especially a single woman that's raising kids. And even if you've left your woman, and I'm saying this from experience because my older son's first mother, and I'm not saying this to get pats on the back, and she passed away in 2011. We separated in 2003, and my son at the time was, I'm going to say 9 or 10 years old. But the whole time, even though we went through some ugly shit, and, it was personal, and I won't get into all that. It's not important. I never once didn't take care of my responsibility. Didn't have to go on child support. And there's many times I would assist in helping her pay her bills. Only due to the fact, even though there was so much hate directed towards me, but that's the mother of my son, regardless. It's not, forget the personal shit. So I'm saying this to all you brothers that if you have ex-wives or ex-girlfriends, you gotta learn to be a big enough a man. And I know when you're in hostile breakups or divorces, it can be very ugly and messy. But remember, the kids ain't got shit to do with that. Don't put them in the middle of it. Don't utilize your problems with your significant other as an excuse not to take care of your motherfucking kids. If you can't take care of your motherfucking kids, one, you shouldn't have had them, and two, you're not a motherfucking man. And don't cry that you ain't got the money. Get a second motherfucking job, okay? Because you had them kids, you were man enough to make them, be man enough to take care of them. Now, I'm also saying this, that's not an excuse for you women to be lazy and not do for yourself. Because some women will try to milk the system and not work and not get any type of job. They'll try to just milk the system of child support, welfare, and just sit on their lazy motherfucking ass. So I'm not condoning that shit either. But I am telling you, do for self and take care of your responsibilities, and everything takes care of itself, whether you're male or female. I don't respect any man that doesn't take care of his kids. I don't respect any man that doesn't pay his child support. Unless he's got a really justifiable reason why, which is usually next to none. So we teach, that's important on this path. If you can't take care of your motherfucking kids, you're not a man. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to skip some of these, get to the meat of it, because I am getting hungry. About to eat. All right, what else we got here? I just see some comments. I'm not going to really read them. You guys are kind of clowning, having fun with yourselves. Yeah. And to Gypsy guys' comment, my older son still, he's finishing up college. My wife I'm with now, who I have my little guy with that you see in some of the videos, she's not the mother of my oldest son. Um, when obviously when my son's mother passed away, obviously he came to stay with me, which is common fucking sense, and look, I just don't respect that. It's personal. You don't have to agree with it. That's my personal stance. I ain't gonna back off on it. And I don't respect anybody that disrespects their mother. Yes, and I was a mama's fucking boy growing up. I love my mother to death. I was the only boy, so I got spoiled. I ain't gonna lie. That's why I'm saying that. Again, confirming what the book says, your influences are gonna shape how you perceive things. I respect nobody that disrespects their mother. And if I see it, I will say something. I don't give a fuck if you don't like it. And I say that too because I lost my mother in 1996, passed away from multiple sclerosis. And I was only 21, 22 years old when she passed away, but got sick when I was 15 or 16. So even the short years that she was a strong influence in my life, and she kind of had it progressive like Richard Pryor had it. It was progressive MS. Now, remember when she had it back then, they didn't have all this technology and medicine they got now. Now you can have MS and almost live a normal life. But back then it was different. She got it and originally was diagnosed in 1988, 87. And, they told her she would only live 3 years, but she wound up lasting about 10, 11 years. And the fucked up thing about it is multiple sclerosis ain't what did her in. It makes, various parts of your immune and nervous system weak. She wound up being taken out by pneumonia. That's what took her out. She had a couple of bouts over the years with pneumonia, but pneumonia is what took her out, believe it or not. And even though healthy, she was an aspect in my life, probably until I was 16, strong influence. My mother, and I get my toughness not from my father, but my mother. My mother didn't take no shit. My mother would literally, and those that grew up know, some of my friends always trip out on it. My mother was the type of person when you walked in the house, she would look at some of her friends and go, "You a sneaky motherfucker. I could tell just by the way you look." That's how she would talk to you. She didn't cut no corners. That's just the way she was. And from seeing that at an early age, that's where I get my influence. Now, my father, the same way. My father, he passed away this past January. And I say this to people. Now, I know not everybody's got good relationships with their parents, but if you've got a beef with your parents over some dumb shit, squash it. Be the bigger person, man. It's not worth it. I watched my older sister and my father not talk to each other over some dumb shit, money. It's not fucking worth it. Trust me when I tell you. Yeah, look, your family could be your biggest test. I know that. They're one of your toughest tests on this path and in life in general. But respect your mother and your father. And if you got some beef with them over some dumb shit, squash it. It's just not worth it. Trust me when I tell you. But I actually detest any motherfucker that. So I can't stand when I see these disrespectful little snobby ass motherfucking kids in public disrespecting their parents. See, we knew our place when we went out. Because when we pulled up to let's say to a grocery store or a store, a retail store, my mother would have that talk with us in the car before we got out the car. All right, I'm gonna tell you this shit before we go in. Don't touch anything. Don't ask for anything because you're not getting it. If you do, I'm gonna smack the shit out of you or I'll leave you in the store. That's what she used to say. So we knew when we got out the fucking car. You understand? We knew our place. Now, I remember one incident. I'll never forget this. This was at the we used to call drugstores in New York. I don't know if y'all remember the bag of Army Men, the little plastic little things. They didn't do shit. They were just plastic figurines. Get like a whole bag of them. There was like 100 of them in a bag. I remember I wanted one of them. I'll never forget it. And I took it off the rack thing that they have it on the hand or whatever. And I took it off and I said, I want to get this. And my mother's like, you ain't getting that. I said, well, I'm not leaving here until I get it. She said, fine, you can keep your ass right here. So I didn't believe it. I sat down. Lo and behold, my mother checked the fuck out. And where I'm sitting, I'm facing the front window. The registers are in the line this way. She went right out the door, right to the right, walked out the door. I saw her ass walk in front of the window, almost shit my pants. I never forget it because, again, from that point on, I never did that shit again. You understand? Because I knew my mother meant business. And I guarantee if I sat there, her ass would have kept on walking. That's the type of person she was. But on the flip note, because I was the only boy, there were times when my other three sisters weren't around. She would spoil me, take me to places she didn't take them. We had a lot of private moments together. And it comes with being the only boy or the only girl for the most part. I think that's actually natural and normal. But I can only speak for myself, and my experience with my mother is the way I feel about moms. Now, I'm not saying every mom is the perfect role model mom and don't do foul shit to their kids, because there are mothers that are not good mothers. And I addressed that too in the beginning of the video on this path. That might be some of the things you have to work with. You may not be, a good mother or a good father. But I can tell you this, even though, and one thing, and I'm grateful for, and I say this, even though we didn't grow up with money, you understand? Even though we didn't have the best of things, but I was fortunate enough to be raised in a family where my parents stayed together, which is a rare thing. And I have the ultimate respect for my father, because my father refused to commit my mother into any type of hospital or nursing facility. We took care of her at home until she passed away. The only time she ever went to the hospital when it was an emergency. And I can remember when my aunt, my mother's sister, suggested to my father to put her into a nursing facility. My father went off. So it's rare you see that. Those days are gone. My parents got married May 7th, 1966. And my father, they stayed married to the very end. And my father it took him over 11 years to finally get with somebody else, till after my mother passed away. And the person he got with, to show you the fate of the universe, my godmother, who's my godmother, was my mother's best friend growing up. That's who my father wound up running into 11, 12 years later, and then they got married. And before, she introduced my father to my mother, because originally they were going to become boyfriend and girl. Ain't that fucked up how shit works? Not in a bad way, in a good way. So I always looked at it, my father was comfortable getting with my godmother, which was my mother's best friend growing up, because I think in his mind, he felt like it was okay. My father's he's more of an old school guy. That was his thing. He was loyal. He's family orientated, and he don't give a fuck if he saw one of his family members kill somebody with a knife in the back. He's going to get your back. That's just the way, that's the way he was. He was going to go all out. He didn't give a fuck what it was. Them days are over. You understand? That's how we handle shit in my neighborhood. Like, I remember, I ain't going to get into depth on camera. I remember one time, my older sister, we had this guy in the neighborhood called Big Jimmy, who used to kind of harass some of the females in the neighborhood. We took care of that shit ourselves. We didn't call the police. I remember getting calling my cousin Chris. I remember, my father. And all I remember is them getting in the car with bats. That was the last thing I seen them. Tell you this, you didn't see Big Jimmy around anymore. You see, that's how we policed ourselves back then. Even though the men might have been doing foul shit, hustling, doing illegal shit, but there's one thing you never fucked with. You never fucked with the females. You never fucked with anybody else's wife. You never harmed anybody's children. That was off limits. If you did that shit, we dealt with it ourselves. We didn't call the police. You understand? We dealt with it ourselves. I can recall several incidences like that. I can recall one I was involved in. My younger sister, which I don't want to incriminate myself on camera, just joking. That's just the way we looked out for each other. And that's how we handle things, and seeing that and watching, what my mother went through, I don't have no respect for anybody that disrespects their mother, because the sad thing about people is it's sad that it takes a tragic and death for people to come together, and it's kind of fucked up. So that's why I'm saying, if you got some beef, some ridiculous, corny beef with your parents, and you're not talking, it's funny how people don't talk over the dumbest shit. A few dollars. Somebody said something. He say, see, come on. I mean, part of this path, whether you really want to accept it or not, all right, part of this path, and one of the hardest things to do to suppress your ego and your pride, right, is to forgive. And there is a time to forgive. It doesn't make you a weak person if you exercise forgiveness. You understand? Some people feel like it's a sign of weakness. Sometimes it's a sign of strength, because it takes a bigger person, especially if you're embattled in a disagreement and you're right.
But sometimes as you get older, it's just not worth the headache. Sometimes you got to be the bigger person to just say, fuck it. This shit is just not worth it. And I had to do that with my father, because when my father had his long-lasting beef with my older sister, because you got to remember, my father, when you got people that come from other countries, they're old school. My father had the mentality. That's just the way he was. It was his way. When it came to family, he had his own perception on how family. And again, it's that old school, immigrant mentality. That was him. It was his way or the highway. Now, I'm not saying it was always right. And I felt in some of the beefs he had with my older sister, he should apologize being a father. Well, I brought that up to him one time. That didn't go over too well. We had a disagreement in a beef, and we didn't talk for about 7-8 months. But then I woke up one day and said, you know what? I understand how he is. I know he's stubborn, and I'm not saying it's right. I know he's the type of person that would take it to his grave. That's how stubborn he is. So I became the bigger person and just said, you know what? Let me squash this shit. You understand? Now, I'm not saying that only applies in certain situations. So I'm not saying to be soft or weak and apologize for everything you do. No, fuck that. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and some people ain't going to understand it and they ain't going to like it, and that's just too fucking bad. That's just a reality too. So I'm speaking in special situations, and in this case, I'm talking about maybe a personal family situation. All right. So I want to be clear on that. So by all means, I'm not saying be passive, be soft, and let people take advantage of you and walk over you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm speaking of that specific scenario. All right. So anyway, if anybody, I'll give anybody opportunity. I don't see any more questions in here. If anybody has, I'll take a couple more questions and wrap this up. I didn't realize we've been on for 2 hours and 30 minutes. But real quick, while I'm waiting for questions to come in, usually Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time is when I use as my regular day to go live. I don't think I'm going to be able to as of right now. I may not be going live Tuesday night. That's why I'm on right now. But I just want to put that out there. Usually Tuesday night, 8 o'clock will be the regular day, Eastern Standard Time. You can catch me on. Also, you can get notifications. I know some people send me emails, say they don't get notifications. And again, if you're not aware, I'm just going to put this out there. When you go on the channel, all you got to do is hit the bell icon, right? If you hit the bell icon, if you say, well, first you hit the subscribe. Okay, when you hit subscribe, then hit the bell on. The bell icon is the notification. Now, to look for notifications, some people, you don't get them like you used to on YouTube where it comes all the time to the top of your phone. If you go onto your YouTube app and you go to where it says subscriptions, and you see, when you look at the bottom and it's red and you hit it, that's going to be all the channels you subscribe to that either, when it's red, it's going to show you all the ones that have put out a new video or are currently live. So I think some people get a little confused. They say they're not getting notifications and they hit the bell, but they're still not seeing when I go live. Keep that in mind. So when you open up your YouTube app, look at the bottom where it says subscriptions. And if you see a red dot there, that means whatever channels or some of the channels you're subscribed to are either are live right now or they just posted a new video. All right. That's how you stay posted. Now, I know some people still, I don't know if it's the software on the phone. Some people still get a notification at the top of their phone. I used to get that. I haven't gotten that in a while. So that's how you kind of want to get the notification. All right. And I do try to post if I'm going to go live. Like today, I kind of contacted people 15 minutes before. So this was a last minute thing. I figured, let me get on and something I had to build on before, if I can't get on Tuesday. All right. Yeah. So, all right. So let's see. I see Prince Yababa typed in something, but KE, I don't know if I'm saying it right. KE hard. Forgiveness is hard. True indeed. And revenge is sweet. Revenge is especially sweet when you know you're in the right. Revenge is especially sweet when somebody fucked you over. You understand, and have what they have or deserve what they got coming from. And remember, that destruction magic is a part of this path. There are times, now I want to make this clear. If you're a person that's doing destruction magic all the time, then there's something wrong with you. You need to check yourself. So you shouldn't have to be doing it 24/7. Are there times where you need to do it? Yes.
There's different varying degrees of it. It is a part of this path. All right. Princia Babbitt typed in, any book recommendations for beginners? Yes. One book I always recommend, and again, you'll hear me talk about it all the time, the Kabbalion, the seven, not the Kabbalah, the Kabbalion, or better known as the 7 Hermetic Principles of Tahuti by the 3 Initiates. There's many different versions of it out there, but I would recommend as a foundational, and a lot of the information that we talked about tonight, that's probably one of the best books to begin with. I would also recommend for candle magic, Charmaine Day, some beginning simple magic practices, The Magic Candle by Charmaine Day. I'll just throw a couple out there. I would also, as a good beginning book to this path, to give you some of the basics, some of the foundations, Israel Regardie, The Middle Pillar, which technically in essence may not be hardcore black magic, but it covers the aspects of you being grounded and in the center. And then maybe progress on to works by from Michael W. Ford. Another good book though, and I would stop with the 4 because the thing is, if you're all over the place, that doesn't do anything productive. Also check out Dark Light Consciousness by Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, who we've had on the radio show a multitude of times. The brother is definitely powerful, and he gives a good foundation. And if you're not familiar with Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum's works, he has traveled the world. He's been initiated in a bunch of different African spiritual systems. He does have experience with the Dravidian, or what we know as the Hindu aspect of left-hand path. He talks about it in his book and in his travels. He deals with Tantra. He is as if you are familiar with him, he is a clinical psychologist. He graduated from Boston University. He actually still holds his practice there. And he deals with the psychological and the mental aspect of the path, which is very important, which I think a lot of quote unquote elders don't address. He talks the importance of being in a sound mind, sound body, especially when branching out and doing work with the Kundalini. Because as we know, Kundalini work can be very painful. It's not always pleasurable if you have different experiences with it. So I would definitely recommend, I would start with those 4. All right. Cobra Queen types in, do you know of a good resource for working with Native American spirits? Yes. Now you're talking about an actual community you can go to. You're talking about a book, a spiritual system. And it just depends on what aspect of Native American spirituality you're trying to connect with. We're talking about shamanism. We're talking about, the witch doctor, the medicine man aspect of it. Are we talking more about spiritual philosophy? Are we talking about different tribal cultures and spirituality? So it depends. Now, I'm fortunate down here, which I go to occasionally. I've been to 2 since I've been here. I haven't been to 1 in a few years. Being here in South Florida, we're actually close to the Seminoles, their reservation, and they do a lot of different events. They have a lot of different powwows, a lot of different ceremonies and rituals that are open to the public. So we're fortunate in this area. I've actually done work, and I did this on the way back from a trip to Athens, Georgia in the beginning of the year in March, which I've been to Ocmulgee Mound in Macon, Georgia a few times. And I've actually done some personal work on the ritual mound. I visited the funeral mounds. They have the preserved temple on the inside, which they've preserved. They've reconstructed it over the years, kept its essence. So I work with the shamanism aspect of it. I've actually carried out rituals and magic on Native American sites. I do private work of it. I have a whole section on my altar working with Indio and Native American spirits. I actually have a particular, since I'm going to say 99, 98, one of my first spiritual readings, I have a particular spirit guide that's a Native American Indian chief that I work with in my personal work. That was a shaman. So it just depends on what aspect of Native American spirituality, because in spiritism, like even in the 21 divisions, Sansei, there's an aspect of working with the Native American spirits in that. In Candomblé or over in Brazil, they have their system of working with Indian spirits. You have the traditional tribal spirituality. I do work with it. You know what? It just actually kind of sparks me. I've only done a few videos on it. That might be something I might want to revisit.
So yes, just depends on when you say a good resource. Again, if you're talking about books, there's not. I found with the book stuff, a lot of it on the surface is generic. Unless you get into, like, for an example here, I'll show you some of the ones that I have saved because I deal more with shamanism, but some of the history books of it. But I'll throw a few out to you real quick. That some titles I have saved because I can't recall all of them by hand here. Let me go into my scribed since I'm not by my bookcase. There's one really good. If that's the path that you choose, shamanism, because that more or less connects to this path. Okay, so hold on. Just wait for this thing to load. All right, here we go into my save. All right, so here. Let me throw these out here to you. Astrology and shamanism, the secrets of shamanism. No, that one's kind of generic garbage. This is a really good book. Peter Fritz Walter, Consciousness and Shamanism. Shaman drumming, which if you've ever been to a powwow or a spiritual gathering, that's if you're a drummer, so that may not apply. Now, this book here by Ono Oral, Psychedelic Shamanism. Now, if it is your desire, I don't really work with the aspect of working with psychedelics, such as DMT and things of that nature, but that's what that book deals with. That is a part of the shamanism path and initiation. To be initiated in certain shaman circles, they do use hallucinogens to induce and make you tap into every aspect of your subconscious mind so you can address everything, even your fears. And that's why I like shamanism, because it teaches you all that. I'm not going to go through all these. There's one other I'm going to throw out here. That one's corny. Where again, I would recommend this is a good book if you do deal with the ayahuasca and the hallucinogens. It's the Shaman and Ayahuasca Journal. I would look into that. And then Christopher Penzak, who he writes a lot of books on magic and left-hand path. He is actually a homosexual practitioner. I'm just bringing that out. Not that it's important, but he's got a book called The Temple of Shamanism, and I would look into that. Just a couple of quick ones to throw out there. All right. What else we got? Oh, say Cobra Cream says working with your own spirit guides. Okay. So if you're working with your own spirit guides, again, you want to take the approach. That's what this path is about. You can work with them any shape, form, or fashion. So you want to start with, what are you trying to accomplish with working with them? I would start with that. So what is it you're trying to accomplish? Are you trying to gain knowledge and wisdom? Are you using these spirit guides to clear up certain paths, areas of your life? Are you working with some of these spirit guides to attain aspects of wealth? Or are you just trying to gain knowledge and wisdom, or tap into some of the mysteries that come along with those spirit guides? So I would say, step one, you want to identify what is it you're trying to accomplish working with these spirit guides. Because when you're working with your own spirit guides, there's not really a certain resource or book. You can just use some of the books that I threw out as an example to maybe push you in your right direction, but you should be creating your own personal rituals when working with those spirit guides. So for an example, if you're working with one of your Indian spirit guides to obtain wealth, you should know certain implements that are familiar with your spirit guide. Maybe that particular spirit guide likes Indian tobacco pipe, or maybe how you visualized or how that spirit guide's manifested or appeared to you. Maybe he plays a Native American flute, or maybe you've seen him on a horse. What I'm saying, you could create a ritual to activate that energy of that spirit guide with those implements and create a ritual centered around whatever goal you're trying to accomplish. All right. Double R, how old are you? I'm not sure why you're asking that, but 47. I'm 47 years old. 47. Big 47. All right. Okay, so I don't really see any other questions. Real quick, I'll give a few more minutes. Did send the flyer out for this month's events. If you didn't get it, I know everybody on the text list, the email list did receive it. All right. If you did not receive it and you're on the list, because mistakes can happen. Because sometimes somebody will hear me say on the video, I sent the flyer out, and then the first thing I get when I get offline, I see an email, I didn't get the flyer. So first I'm going to say check. Sometimes it can go to your junk box. There is a setting where you can filter your junk box to make sure certain things don't go there. Or sometimes it could just be a mistake. I could have fucked up. You understand? So if you didn't get it, just send me an email and I will, be gladly send that over to you. So that flyer is out. We have everything set up. I know some of you have already booked flights and made reservations. I think there's 3 or 4 of you that have already done that. We are expecting what it's looking like now with people here in the area, some people traveling north of the state, people from out of state, and a couple coming from out of the country. It's looking like we got about 15 to 20 people right now that will be at this 2-day event. That might grow as time goes on, but we definitely right now, we have estimated in the count 15 to 20. And again, that could fluctuate as we get closer to the end of the month. It's very critical. You do contact us and request an invite, so we have the exact head count, and we do need to have a brief talk with you so you understand. Participating in the rituals is not an option. You can't watch and just observe. You're not forced to do or participate in any of the rituals, but you will not be able to just sit in and observe. You will not be allowed to come inside the chamber room. We don't ever have that problem. I'm just throwing it out there. So don't waste your time emailing me asking, can I just come and watch? No, that's not what this path is about. It's not observing. If you still are on the fence about doing a black magic working, then maybe it's just not for you at this time. That's all. When we gather and we have these events and we do this work, it's about just that, doing work with a goal in mind. The ritual we will be doing at the end of the month, we will be activating the Luciferian energy and activating the archetype Lucifer and how that connects and works with us as being gods and goddesses. The ritual is centered around masculine, feminine principles, male, female, different aspects of it, and we will be working with chakras in that particular ritual. We'll leave that there. So we have a host of 2 days of events planned for this. Again, looking forward to seeing some of you there. So that's where we're at right now. All right. Other than that, let me just see. I don't think there's any more questions. I think we're going to wrap this puppy up. Again, not sure if I'll be on Tuesday, but Tuesday, 8 p.m. will be the regular time I usually come on live. There's still a 50-50 chance I might be on Tuesday. I'm not sure. So just look out for the notification. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm not going to make any excuses or lie. I'm about to get off so I can go eat because my ass is hungry as shit. And I smell something good in the kitchen. And I'm about to fuck it up, pretty much. That's what I'm getting ready to do. And getting ready to watch some football because I'm not spooky and spiritual. I love sports. My Yankees are off tonight. So I'm going to flip back and forth between football and playoff baseball tonight. Maybe a little preseason basketball. And I can catch some of that on the side of the satellite. I know basketball is getting ready to pop off. It's my favorite time of year because there's a short period of time where 3 sports, actually almost 4 sports, are rocking at the same time. So it's a great time if you're a sports fan right now. You got playoffs, you got football, basketball getting ready to pop off. So it's like a pig in shit. I don't even know what that means. What the fuck does that mean? Happier than a pig in shit. What the fuck does that mean? Anyway. All right. Peace, love, and hair grease. All right. We'll talk soon.